This is one of those topics that no one really wants to think about, but if you're a parent, a homeowner, married, or helping take care of aging parents, it's something that honestly deserves a little attention. I'm talking about estate planning. And before you tune out thinking it's complicated or expensive, that's actually why I want to mention Trust and Will. Trust and Will makes estate planning feel way less intimidating than it sounds. They offer modern, attorney-designed wills and trusts that you can create online. And the process is surprisingly straightforward. In fact, you can create a will in as little as 30 minutes. That includes things like guardianship for your kids or pets, how your assets are distributed, and even healthcare directives. Don't wait until it's too late. Protect your loved ones with Trust and Will, the most trusted name in online estate planning. Go to trustandwill.com/future to get 20% off. That's trustandwill.com/future for 20% off. trustandwill.com/FUTURE.
This podcast is sponsored by Talkspace.
Last year, I went through many different life changes. I needed to take a pause and examine how I was feeling in the inside to better show up for the ones who need me to be my best version of myself.
When you're navigating life's changes, Talkspace can help. Talkspace is the #1 rated online therapy, bringing you professional support from licensed therapists and psychiatry providers that you can access anytime, anywhere.
Living a busy life, navigating a long-distance relationship, becoming a first-step father, Talkspace made all of those journeys possible. I could speak with my therapist in the office. I could speak with my therapist in the comfort of my home. I was never alone.
Talkspace works with most major insurers, and most insured members have a $0 copay. No insurance, no problem. Now get $80 off your first month with promo code SPACE80 when you go to Talkspace.com. Match with a licensed therapist today at Talkspace.com. Save $80 with code SPACE80 at Talkspace.com.
A warm Evo! Welcome to lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. This is one of my favorite podcasts of the year. This is the 2026 NCAA Tournament special. We're going to keep this very simple. We're going to, here in the first segment, just break down the few games that we saw on Sunday to be able to cash those last few automatic bids to the NCAA Tournament that we saw in segment number 2, because I recognize I'm going to have a little bit of a different audience for this podcast than I typically do. Typically, we're going a little bit more on the betting side of things, and I do this podcast to be able to help out everyone out there because everyone fills out a bracket. So I'm going to give you guys my bracket picks for those that have the expectations of bets and analysis with regards to sides and totals. You're going to be getting that as well for the first round of the NCAA Tournament. Hard to really know what we're going to be getting in terms of Final Four handicaps because we don't know what the Final Four is quite yet. That's my job to try to pick that correctly, but I'm going to get you guys every single pick on my bracket. You're going to get every single game breakdown in terms of the current sides and totals with regards to what we're seeing right now on the betting board as well throughout this podcast. Now, when it comes to Thursday and Friday, I'll be going back through these games because the openers that we have right now, they are very much going to be moving, and there are going to be some of you that place bets right away. There are going to be some of you that wait until Thursday/Friday. It is all good. We're going to get you guys picks and analysis, bets, and so much more for the entire NCAA tournament here, and we're going to do this to where I do the first round games, a round of 64 on the first 4 in segment number 2. So after we react to what all happened on Sunday, we're going to go through those first round games and the first 4, and then a round of 32 and beyond. That is going to be in the final segment. Going to be a lot of fun. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you do have one or two ways we fire those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at @GUnit_81. Keep in mind, letters ZM, they mean does not matter. So as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. The other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it's very much appreciated. And then from there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. The only questions I got is, one, was the bracket going to be unveiled and everything like that? Well, you're getting it right here, right now. I always make sure that I keep it cost-free, but you do have to listen to the podcast, which you're doing right now, in order to get it. I don't put it out there in paper form or anything like that. So if you're tuned into the podcast right now, you're in the right place for a little bit of everything, and we're going to have ourselves some fun today. And first things first, let's take a look at those 5 games that we saw on Sunday to be able to set the field of 68, try to find some trends, and try to get to know these teams a little bit better.
Games from yesterday is Greg buzzing about. Here is the rowdy recap.
Purdue, it's a crescendo at the end of the season. They take down Michigan by a count of 80-72. for Purdue, they only go 4 of 14 from three-point, but Braden Smith, he did a nice job with his double-double, 14 points, 11 assists, 0 turnovers, 3 steals for Purdue. They win the turnover battle 7-2. Very efficient on this day for Michigan. They go 7 of 24 from 3, and Yaxel Lindeborg looked better in this game. 20 points, 4 of 7 from three-point range, but for Purdue, they were able to do a nice job around the outside. They did a nice job keeping things clean, and they were able to win the Big Ten tournament. As a result, you saw Penn be able to take down the Ivy League tournament, 88-84 the final. Penn 18-9 against the spread, just their 7th over of the season, so they've been a top 5 team to the under this season. They went 14 out of 28 from 3, down 3 points towards the end of regulation. TJ Power not fouled. They did not intentionally foul or anything like that. He hits a 3, and he hits 7 of them in this game. 44 points, 14 rebounds for the former top 25 recruit of Duke, and for Yale, they go 9 of 24 from 3. Yale does win the rebound battle 41-37. They win the turnover battle 13-9, but Penn goes 16 out of 16 at the free throw line to be able to get that one to the window. For South Florida, they take down Wichita State 70-55 the final. And South Florida's been covering some big numbers here recently, just 6 of 22 from 3, but Wes Ennis was able to supply this team with 19 points, 3 steals. For South Florida, they win the turnover battle 14-10. Wichita State, they go just 4 of 19 from 3, 19 out of 56 from the floor, as Dylan Beatty, he supplied the team with 15 points. Lone guy that gave you 10-plus points, so that was a little bit of a disappointment for Wichita State. No disappointment for VCU, who apparently needed to win this game in order to get into the NCAA tournament. 70-62, they do just that, as for VCU, 11 out of 24 from three-point range. Nick Lewis, he was the main man with 17 points, 11 boards. He goes 4 of 5 from three-point range. VCU does lose the rebound battle 39-34, but won the turnover battle 11-5 against a Dayton team that has been solid in terms of generating turnovers. Javon Bennett was able to give the team 14 points, but not a lot outside of that for Dayton. And then in the SEC tournament, Arkansas, who's been a really good against the spread team, they take it to Vanderbilt. This by kind of 86-75 for Vanderbilt. They do go 10 of 24 from 3. 15 out of 24 for Arkansas. Darius Acuff, 30 points, 11 assists. Arkansas does lose a turnover battle 10-7, but 15 out of 24 from three-point range. That's a nice elixir to a lot of things. Billy the Kid Richmond, he did a nice job being able to give this team 18 points. And for Arkansas, against the spread, they do find themselves as now a top 10 team in terms of covering in all of college basketball. Vanderbilt, they're starting to pick up a little bit of steam as well. But for Arkansas, with this win and cover, now 22-12 against the spread thus far this season. And if you're looking at trend-wise, what we're getting in college basketball right now, last 7 days, so championship week, it was all about unders. How about 109 unders to 83 overs? That's a 56.8% hit rate. The underdogs hitting at 54.2%. 104 and 88 against the spread. And if you look at the entirety of the season, underdogs sitting at 51.5%, 2,906, 2,737 against the spread. Meanwhile, the unders hitting at about 50.8%, 2,866 unders to 2,778 overs. So that's what we're seeing in college basketball right now. That's what we're all getting trend-wise. Coming up next, let's start it up. It's the bracket edition of the podcast I love to do every single year. You're going to get betting picks, and you're going to get all my picks for the first round of the NCAA tournament on the flip side. And then in the final segment, we go round of 32 and beyond. Right here on Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Peterson, now a part of the VSiN Family Podcast. Side edge this college basketball season? Well, VSiN experts use CBB Analytics, the most comprehensive college basketball analytics platform in the world. See injury impact, on and off data, clutch time performance metrics, first versus second half splits, and so much more. Utilize the promo code of VSiN, that is VSIN, to get $30 off and find your betting edge over at cbbanalytics.com. That is cbbanalytics, all one word, .com. For anyone that is new to VSiN, well, I wish you a friendly hello. This is an attention to anyone that is new to VSiN because you're able to get some free stuff with our daily newsletter. It's a great way to catch up on everything that's happening in the sports betting world. It's delivered straight to your inbox every single morning. VSiN's newsletter offers picks, data, strategies for the day's betting menu, and so much more. Sign up for free today over at VSiN.com/newsletter. That's VSIN.com/newsletter, and start receiving your free newsletter tomorrow morning. That is VSIN.com/newsletter. Stay ahead of the game and bet smarter with VSiN. And we're back here, lovely Las Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peters, and now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. All right, it's that time, the podcast that you've all been waiting for. Let's start to get into the bracket. Let's find you guys some winners with regards to the first round of the NCAA Tournament. You get my bracket picks, my picks, and analysis for the round one games here in this segment, round two and beyond. That is going to be in the final segment, so let's get it cooking right about now and start hitting some bank shots.
Most financial establishments close at a certain time, but not here. It is time for a side and total on every game on today's betting board bank shots.
This is the lone day of the year that I don't go in Las Vegas rotation order. Because I'm doing a bracket show, I'm going to be going in bracket order. So we're going to start with the East, go down to the South, then the West and the Midwest. So that's the way that we are going to be structured here. And how about if we started off with Duke versus Siena? If you're taking a look at the point spread, you've got Duke currently a 29.5 point favorite. Totals anywhere between 135.5 to a 136.5. If you advance Siena on your bracket, you are a very, very bold soul, because I will not be doing so. That said, I'm going to be willing to take 29.5 here with Siena. It's a Siena group that is going to be looking to make this thing a slog. They're outside the top 350 in terms of total possessions per game. For Siena, they're outside the top 300 with their 3-point shooting percentage, but this has been a Siena group that has been able to do a really good job in terms of hitting the road with their defense. Overall for the season, about 58th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. In road/neutral court games, that does ascend in the top 20. Now you've got a Duke team that has obviously been oh so dominant. This Duke team is number one in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Cameron Boozer is the consensus pick right now to win player of the year with 22.5 points, 10 boards, 4 assists, shoots 41% from 3. They are dealing with injuries. Now they're thinking that Patrick Ngongba should be good to go for the NCAA tournament. I think that they might rest him for round number one. They are dealing with Caleb Foster injury. If they can get him for any point in the NCAA tournament, they'll be lucky there. But Isaiah Evans gives you 15 points. He's able to shoot 36.5% from 3. You've got Dame Sarr and guys like this who have been able to step up in the interim. And for the Siena group, it's led by Jerry McNamara. Yes, that Jerry McNamara of Syracuse. And he's been able to do a nice job with Kevin Doty leading the way. 18 points, 7 boards. It's a Siena team that has been a top 100 team with regards to their rebound percentage. They've been able to do a nice job on the inside as well. They're a top 75 team with regards to opponent's 2-point shooting percentage. The fact that Duke is so stout down low, that hurts the Siena team, because again, they are outside the top 320 with their 3-point shooting percentage, but Justice Schultz has been able to give you 13 points, 4.5 assists per game. Siena is a top 100 team in the country in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. Away from them, at home, they don't generate quite as many turnovers, so they've actually been a little bit of a better road defense. And with having someone like a Braden Coyle being able to chip in there about 8.5 points, 4.5 rebounds per game, I think that Siena's going to hold within this number. I think that they're going to cause this thing to be a slog, so I'm going to be taking a shot on the under. So my total at a 132.5, and with Duke, I set them as a 26.5 point favorite, so going to advance them on my bracket, but I'm going to be willing to take the points with Siena. And then we've got TCU versus Ohio State. This is the 8-9 matchup, and with TCU, they are currently a 2.5 point underdog. Total on this game, 146 and 146.5. I did advance Ohio State in my bracket, and I'm going to be willing to lay the number here with Ohio State. For Ohio State, the big key is getting back John Mobley. He was dealing with an injury for the last few weeks. Number 2 scorer for Ohio State. Ever since he came back, this team went from being a bubble team to firmly in the NCAA tournament. Shoots about 42% from 3, and he and Bruce Thornton, top 2 scorers for this team, both shoot above 82.5% of the free throw line, and Ohio State just does a little things well. They're a top 75 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis. They shoot 77.5% of the free throw line. That's a top 25 mark in the country. They're a top 35 team with their 2-point shooting percentage, and they guard the arc well as well. Top 75 team in terms of opponent's 3-point shooting percentage. And for TCU, you've got Punch down low. David Punch, 15 plus points, 7 boards, multiple blocks per contest, and then you've been able to get quite a bit out of Brock Harding. He's come over from Iowa. He's been able to give you about 5 assists per game. And then Jaden Pierre is a nice mixer and shaker out there in the backcourt who's been able to do a relatively solid job, giving you double figures, shoots in the high 30s from 3. Overall for TCU, they are 47th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but they have some big home and road splits. They are giving up about 12.9 points more per 100 possessions when they're away from home rather than at home. Iowa State just 174th in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but they do a relatively solid job in terms of guarding the 3-point line. And this is a TCU team that, even though they've got David Puncher down low, they have not necessarily been the world's greatest interior defense. With this TCU team, right now they're checking in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, right around about 155th in all of college basketball. With Ohio State, they're not necessarily a supreme team in terms of giving themselves second and third chances outside the top 230 with regards to offensive rebound percentage, but Christoph Tilley, Devin Royal, these two guys have been able to combine for about 24.5 points per game, and between the two of them, a little bit over 10.5 rebounds per game, even though TCU does a great job in terms of winning the turnover battle, and they are generating as many turnovers as they do, a top 45 team. In terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, they themselves are a little bit sloppy with it outside the top 100 with that regard. It is a TCU team that they play fast, but not necessarily warp speed fast, about 88th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, while I say more on 265th, so do think that you get a little bit of a lower scoring game, like the under semi total 143, and with Ohio State, both advance them on my bracket, and I'm going to be willing to lay the number with them as well. Staying out in the East region, this is 5 versus 12, Northern Iowa versus St. John's, and right now for St. John's, you're finding them as a double-figure favorite. They are laying between 11 to 11.5 points, 131.5 to 132.5 is the total, and I'm going to be willing to take the points with Northern Iowa. I was hoping they would get a better draw to be able to take them in like a 5-12 upset. I just can't do so against the St. John's team, and recognize that St. John's, not necessarily the best shooting team in the world. They're outside the top 150 with regards to their 2-point and 3-point shooting percentage. This team should just be able to maul on the glass. Now, Northern Iowa has been a top 30 team in terms of defensive rebound percentage, but they are going to be up against it against a team that has Zuby Ejiofor with about 16 points, 7 boards, 3.5 assists per game, and then additionally Dylan Mitchell. He's been able to supply this team with about 7 rebounds, 8 points per game. For St. John's, their overall top 45 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. And even though they haven't been able to figure out that main point guard role yet, they've been a top 75 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis. This figures to be a little bit of a tempo war as well. For St. John's, they're about 40th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, and Northern Iowa, they check in 362nd. Northern Iowa's forte is 3-point shooting defense, number 3 in the country, with teams shooting less than 28.5% from 3-point range. Northern Iowa also has a pair of relatively solid guards. Leon Bond, who began his career over at Virginia, has been able to do a solid job being able to give this team right around about 12 points, 5 boards. He's that mixer and shaker that shoots 36.5% from 3. And then Trey Campbell, 13.5 points, 4 assists per game, but Will Hornseth is really their main form of, shall we say, low post play. He's been able to give the team about 4.5, 5 rebounds per game. X Weisbrod. They've got some nice ancillary pieces, but that said, for Northern Iowa, it's a team that if they get put to the free throw line, they shoot only about 70% at the free throw line. For Northern Iowa, they're an okay defense down low, but they're still outside the top 75 with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, and they don't give themselves second chances to score. Outside the top 340 in terms of offensive rebound percentage, think that it's going to be a slog, but I do think that Northern Iowa, with their 3-point shooting defense, does enough to hold in there. I think you get just enough possessions for the over. Semi-total 132.5, so I like the over. For St. John's, I'm going to be willing to advance them on my bracket, but in terms of point spread, I took double figures here with Northern Iowa, made them an 8.5-point underdog. And then we've got Cal Baptist versus Kansas. This is the 4-13 matchup, and Cal Baptist, a 14 to a 14.5-point underdog with your total between 134.5 to 136. Now, I cannot get there with regards to advancing Cal Baptist to the next round on my bracket, but I can get there in terms of taking 14. You have a Kansas team that has just, it feels like, been a little bit neither here nor there with Darren Peterson playing 30-plus minutes. This Kansas team is outside the top 80 with regards to points per possession on offense. The defense has been great. They are a top 35 team in terms of opponents' 2-point and 3-point shooting percentage. The one thing that they don't do, though, is generate turnovers. They are outside the top 320 in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, and do have a Cal Baptist team that has been really strong on the inside. For Cal Baptist, they're a top 30 team with regards to overall rebound percentage. They are a top 35 team in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, and Kansas is relatively pedestrian with their 3-point shooting. You do have Trey White shooting 42% from 3 with about 14.6 half rebounds per game, but their main forte is down low. Someone like a Flory Badunga, who's been able to give you 2.5 blocks, 9 boards, 13.5 points per game. Meanwhile, for Cal Baptist, they're not necessarily executing the world's greatest on the inside, outside the top 250 with their own 2-point shooting percentage, but top 15 team in terms of offensive rebound percentage. They actually have the best scorer in this game, Dominic Daniels. He averages more points than Darren Peterson. Peterson, about 19 points per game for Kansas. Daniels, 23.5 points, 3 assists, 4 boards, shoots in the low 30s from 3-point range. And then Martell Williams, how he does it is to give you about 5 rebounds per game. And then you got Jonathan Grimman, Thomas Endong, Brady Henjai. Neither of these guys, actually all 3 of these guys, score 6 points per game or less, but between the 3 of them, 18 rebounds per game. This team does a great job in terms of hitting the boards. I think that those second and third chances are going to be just enough for you to be able to get over. Kansas, a mid-tempo team, right around about 200 in terms of total possessions per game. Cal Baptist, more around 210. So I actually do like the over, so I might total 136. And with Kansas, can only make them an 8-point favorite. Advance Kansas on my bracket, but I was very willing to take the points here with Cal Baptist on the point spread. Now we go 6 versus 11. This is South Florida taking on Louisville, and Louisville's a 5.5 to a 6-point favorite. Totals right now in the mid 160s. Right now, seeing anywhere between 165.5 to 164.5, and I do like South Florida with the points, and I advanced them on my bracket. I did not take them on the money line, and the reason why I've only won with the points and not a money line pick here with South Florida is because you just don't know what you're going to get out of Mikael Brown right now for Louisville. It sounds a little bit doubtful that he's going to give you a ton here in the NCAA tournament, especially early on. He's been the main facilitator for Louisville, 18 points, 4.5 assists, and he really picked it up with the 3-point shooting in conference play only. From 3 points, was shooting about 38% from the outside, and it's a Louisville team that they live and die by the 3-ball. They take over 53% of their field goal attempts from 3-point. That's a top 10 percentage in the country. Now, I will say this for Louisville. Everyone always talks about the offense, but the defense has still been rock solid for this team. They're overall about 51st in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but they do give up 17.6 points more per 100 possessions when they're away from home rather than at home. Louisville has also been pretty solid on the glass, 26th in terms of overall rebound percentage. Now you've got a South Florida team, though, that is headlined by Isaiah Nelson. He comes on over with his coach in Brian Hodgson from Arkansas State, and he's been able to do a nice job averaging a double-double for this team as he's been putting up about 15.5 points, between 9.5 to 10 rebounds per game, but he's got a little bit of help down low as well. Josh Omajafo at 6'5" does a bit of everything, 11.5 points, 5.3 rebounds per game. Now for South Florida, overall for the season, this has been a team that's been a little bit lackadaisical with their 3-point shooting defense, but it's gotten better and better as the season goes along for South Florida. Overall, they're about 180th in the country in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, but it's a little bit better away from home rather than at home. And you've got a Louisville team that they've been able to do a pretty solid job in terms of guarding the arc, 32.7%. That's a top 110 mark in the country, but with the way that South Florida is able to hit the boards, they actually lead the country in terms of free throw attempts per game. And the way that Louisville is just a little bit, shall we say, wounded, even with Sandera Frew being able to give you some rebounds, I do think that South Florida should have a good chance to be able to get the job done. Like I said, I couldn't take the money line quite yet with South Florida because that Mikael Brown injury is something that I do want to note, but in my bracket, I advanced South Florida, and I'm taking them with the points in terms of the spot, and I did set my total 161.5. I do think that the Brown injury hurts Louisville with an offensive perspective, even though South Florida is also a top 10 team in the country in terms of total possessions per game, but in on the points and the bracket pick with South Florida, and I do like this total under as well. And then we go with the 3-4 matchup. North Dakota State is facing off against Michigan State. Michigan State a 16 to a 16.5 point favorite. Total is 142.5 to 143.5, and I do like the points here with North Dakota State. I'm not going to advance them on my bracket, but for North Dakota State, this is actually a very balanced team, as right now they're shooting over 36% from 3. That's a top 60 mark in all of college basketball for North Dakota State. They've been able to do a much better job recently on the glass as well. If you look at overall rebound percentage, they're a top 35 team in the country, and that is a forte of Michigan State. In games played away from home, Michigan State is allowing teams to grab fewer than 20% of their missed shots as an offensive rebound. That is numero uno in all of college basketball. You've got the best facilitator in this game with Jeremy Fears, 15 points, 9.2 assists per game, but it is a Michigan State team that is outside the top 180 in terms of their ball security. It's a team that's neither here nor there in terms of their tempo. North Dakota State, they've been a mid-tempo team, 183rd in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Michigan State, they're playing at a little bit of a slower tempo at about 272nd, and for Michigan State, they actually shoot about 32.7% from 3-point at home, above 39% away from home. One of the more wackadoo splits in the country with Jackson Kaler supplying about 12.5 points, 9 rebounds per game, but I think that North Dakota State is going to be able to hold in there because this team has been graded in terms of generating turnovers as well. Top 50 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. They're wheeling and dealing with Jamari Wheeler-Thomas, give you 14.5 points, and he shoots 38.5% from 3-point. Trayson Anderson supplies about 37% 3-point shooting, 10.5 points out of him. You've got Trayvon Carson, who's giving you about 3 assists, 2 steals per game. North Dakota State, they're a top 125 team in terms of ball security as well. So in this spot, I do think that North Dakota State is going to be able to hold within this big number. Do I think that they pull the upset of Michigan State? No, but I'm going to be willing to take 16.5 points. So advancing Michigan State on my bracket, but going to be willing to take the points with Michigan State. They are a top 40 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. So set a total of a 140.5. I'm also in on this total under as well. 7-10 matchup. You've got Central Florida, and they're going to be matched up against UCLA. And if you look at the point spread right now, UCLA finds themselves as a favorite of between 5.5 152.5 to 6.5 points. 152.5 to 153.5 is the total. Set a total of 148.5. I do like the under. Now, you've got a UCLA team that's not playing with much tempo. 296th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, and Central Florida is very much looking to bump it up. They're a top 80 team in terms of total possessions per game, and for Central Florida, I was willing to take the points with them. I wanted to advance them on my bracket because if you look at this UCLA team, they went in games at home 17-1 straight up. In games played away from home, they won fewer than 50% of them. I believe that they were 6-10 in those games, but you also have a Central Florida team that has been lackadaisical in terms of their defense, in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Outside the top 225 there, they're honestly a country average team with their opponent's three-point shooting percentage at about 34%, and that's where the bread is buttered for UCLA. They're a top 30 team with their three-point shooting percentage above 38%. Donovan Dent, who was a little bit banged up in the Big Ten tournament along with Tyler Bilodeau, both of those guys should be good to go. Bilodeau shoots 44% from three, 16-plus points, 5-plus rebounds per game. Dent has been able to give you 7 assists per game. Really doesn't give you a lot of three-point shooting, but for Central Florida, this has been a top 75 team in terms of overall offensive rebound percentage. They grab about 12.5 offensive boards per game, which Michael Stillwell, who was playing over at Milwaukee last season, along with his teammate from Milwaukee, Themis, folks, really elevating this team. Stillwell has been supplying about 12 points, pair of assists, 8 rebounds per game, and then Folks throws in there 14 points. He's shooting 40% from three. He gives you about 6.5 assists per game. It's a UCLA team that in the past has been really good in terms of generating turnovers. They've seen a little bit of a fall off with that this season, and Central Florida has been neither here nor there in terms of taking care of the ball, but like what Riley Kugel brings to the table, 14.5 points. He shoots about 39% from three-point range, and for Central Florida, their biggest weakness has been on the inside, but the same goes for UCLA. UCLA is outside the top 170 with their own two-point shooting percentage, outside the top 220 in terms of opponent's two-point shooting percentage. Now, UCLA in a pressure spot, they do shoot about 76.5% at the free throw line, and they're doing a great job taking care of the ball. They're a top 15 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis, but they've also been outside the top 175 with regards to rebound percentage, even with Dent and Bilodeau most likely being in the fold. I'm willing to take the points here with Central Florida. Not willing to take them on the money line or anything like that, but this UCLA team hasn't traveled the best, so I'm going to be willing to take those points. I like the under as well. I set my total 148.5 with obviously UCLA advancing in my bracket, and then this is the last matchup out there in the East Regional. This is UConn versus Furman, and Furman, shock, surprise, surprise, they find themselves as a big underdog of between 20 to 21 points. Totals between 136.5 to 137.5, and I did take the points with Furman. I set them as an 18.5 point underdog. Not going to be advancing the 15 seed on my bracket this season, but for Furman, they're a top 10 team in the country with regards to their two-point shooting percentage away from home. You've gotten really good production out of the Bowsers. Cooper Bowser, 14 points, 6 rebounds per game. And then Cole Bowser, who I do not think is any sort of relation, he's been able to give the team 5.5 rebounds per game. They were dealing with an injury to their top three-point shooter in Asa Thomas throughout much of SoCon play. He's come back. He shoots about 39% from three, and Furman not necessarily the best team around the outside. They are a team that's outside the top 230 with regards to turnovers on a per possession basis. They've been only shooting about 32.5% from three. That's outside the top 240 in the country, but they are a top 125 team in terms of opponent's three-point shooting percentage, and with UConn, it just feels like something's been a little bit off with this team. They've been unable to cover a lot of point spreads. They've been less than 40% against the spread this season. Not that they're a bad team or anything like that. I mean, you've got Solo Balls, they will give you 13.5 points per game. Terrace Reed, 13.5 points, 8 rebounds per game. And then you've had Silas Emery be a little bit of a do-it-all guy, 10.5 points, 4.5 boards, 6 assists. So, I mean, he's been able to do a little bit of this and that. But for UConn, it just feels like a lot of their games have been incomplete. They're really good on the inside. They're a top 40 team with their own two-point shooting percentage. They're a top 25 team in terms of opponents' two-point shooting percentage as well, and they've been a really good shot blocking team. Top 20 team with that regard, but I think that Furman is going to be able to do just enough to be able to hold in this one, so I'm willing to take the points with Furman, as I did set them as more of an 18.5 point underdog. That total between 136.5 and 137.5. Have a pair of teams that are really not looking to push tempo. For UConn, 285th in terms of total possessions per game and a top 40 defense in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Furman is 269, so I do like the under, and obviously with UConn, going to advance them in my bracket. Now we go to the South Regional. This is Florida, and they're going to take on the winner of Prairie View versus Lehigh. I do not have Prairie View or Lehigh knocking off this Florida team, so rest assured there, but In terms of this first four matchup, for those that pick it, Prairie View, they're right now about a 2.5 point underdog, total of 145.5, and I like the over, and I'm willing to lay with Lehigh. Both of these teams have similar kryptonites. Neither of these teams are very good on the glass. Lehigh is outside the top 3 with regards to their rebound percentage. Meanwhile, you've got a Prairie View team that is 336th, and Prairie View, they play games with a lot of free throws. They're a top 50 team in terms of free throws attempted on a per possession basis, and boy, oh boy, will they put you at the free throw line. They're in the top 50 in terms of free throw attempts allowed on a per possession basis as well. In Prairie View, they do shoot about 75% of the charity stripe there, ironically enough, 75th in the country. But for Lehigh, you do have a guy named Cyril Whitlock who's able to give you 21 plus points per contest, shoots 40% from 3. Lehigh overall, they only shoot about 73% of the free throw line, so a little bit lower than Prairie View, but I do think that Lehigh is going to be able to execute here, as Lehigh is not allowing you good looks from 3. They're a top 15 team in terms of percentage of opponents' field goal attempts that come from inside the 3-point line, and Prairie View hovers right around 300 with their 2-point shooting percentage. They shoot around 33.5% from 3-point range. That's about country average, and Terrion Joseph along Dante Horn have been 2 explosive scorers for Prairie View. Joseph was mentioning throughout the back half of their conference play, he was able to return in the conference tournament, but he played 14 minutes or less in pretty much 4 of the last 5 games that he saw action in, so he's not looking to be 100%. Dante Horn, well, he's been going around the horn with about 24 points per game in SWAC play. He's stepped up as that number 1 scorer with Horn being out of the fold, and then you've got Doug Young, who dealt with injury all season long, so that means that Lance Williams has had to be the main 3-point shooter for this team. And for Lehigh, even though they've been getting absolutely dragged on the glass, they actually have a little bit of an advantage here with regards to rebound percentage, with Hank Alvey give you 15 points, 7 boards, a block, 2 assists per game, and then you've had Joshua Ingram be able to give this team 10.5 points per game. It's a Lehigh team that overall shooting about 36% from 3-point range. That's a top 85 mark in the country. They're about a country average team with their own 2-point shooting percentage. Don't pull in there any sort of second and third chances. And Prairie View, they're an incredible team in terms of generating turnovers. They are actually a top 50 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. Lehigh's been at about 250th in terms of taking care of the ball, but with the way that Lehigh forces everything on the inside, I do think that they get the job done here, and I very much like the over. With Lehigh, they're about 200th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Prairie View guns it though, 20th in the country, so I did set a total of a 151F. I like the over, and with Lehigh, I'm going to be willing to lay up to 3 with them, and obviously, don't advance a 16 seed on your bracket. And then we've got Clemson versus Iowa. Right now with Clemson, they do find themselves as an underdog of anywhere between 2 to 2.5 points, and with regards to the total, right now you're finding that in the neighborhood about a 131 to a 131.5, and I do like the under. I did set my total at a 130.5, so 131 plus, I'm going to be willing to take a shot on the under, and with regards to both the money line underdog pick and my pick on the bracket, I'm going to be going with Clemson. For Iowa, I've noticed one thing with this team. They're not necessarily the strongest team down low. Now, they're great in terms of generating turnovers. Top 25 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. And you look at the overall defense in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, they've been sturdy. They've been 80th in the country. That said, where they can really go wrong is down low. And this is a Clemson team that has been neither here nor there in terms of their 3-point shooting. For Iowa, in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, right now they're checking at about 278th in the country, and Clemson, they're much better at 64th. Clemson, also a top 75 team in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. Now, they did suffer a little bit of an injury in the ACC tournament, as Carter Welling, a guy that was giving the team about 10.5 points, 5 rebounds per game, he is going to be out for the NCAA tournament, but this is very much a whole greater than the sum of its parts team. You still have pretty much 7 different guys that give you between 5.4 and 11.9 points per game, with RJ Godfrey now being pretty much the lone double-figure scorer for this team, 12 points, 5.5 rebounds per game, but this Clemson team is doing a great job in terms of not allowing a lot of second and third chances, top 35 unit in terms of defensive rebound percentage. Now with Iowa, they've got a lot of guys from that Drake squad that was able to knock off Missouri in the NCAA tournament on this roster, with Ben Jacobson taking the job in the offseason. Bennett Sturts has been the main guy, 20 points, 4.5 assists. He shoots about 37.5% from 3. In Iowa, they shoot about 35.7% from 3. That's a top 100 mark in the country, and they've been a top 40 team with their 2-point shooting percentage, but with the way that Clemson is able to hunker down there, Iowa doesn't give themselves a lot of second and third chances to score outside the top 140 with regards to their offensive rebound percentage. I do think that with Clemson doing a great job taking care of the ball, top 75 team, in terms of the fewest turnovers on a per possession basis, that wins out here. So 131 plus, like the under, and with Clemson, advance them on my bracket, and I'm taking them on the money line as an underdog. Now we go to the 5-12 matchup in this region, as you've got Vanderbilt, and they're taking on McNeese, and McNeese does find themselves as a double-figure underdog, as you're catching with them anywhere between 11 to 11.5 points, totals between 150 to 150.5. I will be advancing Vanderbilt on my bracket, but with regards to the spread, I did set Vanderbilt as only a 10.5 point favorite. I'm going to take 11 plus with McNeese. McNeese has been remarkable at generating turnovers. 23.9% of opponents' possessions do end in a turnover. That is numero uno in all of college basketball. Now you've got a Vanderbilt team that's doing a lot of little things really well. For Vanderbilt, in terms of ball security, they are 10th in the country in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis. And I think for Vanderbilt, what is so key for this team? Getting back Duke Miles, because he was missing when the team was going through their lulls, for lack of a better term, in SEC play. As this was one of the last undefeated teams in all of college basketball. Duke Miles goes down with a little bit of an injury. He was out for about 10 or so games. He's come back, and he has been tremendous for this team. 16.5 points, 2.6 steals, shoots 89% of the free throw line, 36% from three. They were clearly missing something without him. Now that he's back, that is big. And you do have a McNeese team that is going to give up a lot of second and third chances outside the top 275 in terms of defense rebound percentage. Now they're also a top 40 team in terms of offensive rebound percentage, and Vanderbilt has been a little bit fragile on the glass outside the top 175 in terms of defensive rebound percentage, but I do think that Devin McLaughlin, Jalen Washington, pair of guys are averaging about 12.5 rebounds per game. They're going to be able to hold their own. And then you've got Ike Okereke, who's been able to give you about 10 points. He shoots about 40% from three-point range. For McNeese, Gawari Duel, a former top 50 recruit, hasn't necessarily been like a dynamo scorer for this team, but he's been a little bit of a mixer and shaker for McNeese. He's able to give you about 8 points, 3 boards, 4 assists per game. And then you've got a guy in Javon Garcia, who gives you 12 points per game. He's shooting 37.5% from three. Tyson Archie shoots 37.5% from the outside. And for McNeese, to their credit, they've been a top 50 team in terms of taking care of the ball. They are a top 50 team in terms of free throws attempted on a per possession basis, but the fact that Vanderbilt does such a great job in terms of taking care of the ball, I think that that's going to be a little bit of the undoing for McNeese, and with there being fewer turnovers in this game, I do think that that leads for a little bit of a higher scoring game. Semi-total at a 150.5, so I'm going to be willing to take 11 plus here with McNeese. With regards to this total right now, I'm seeing anywhere between about a 150 to a 150.5, so 150 or less like the over, and then I'm advancing Vanderbilt on my bracket. And then we've got the 3-4 matchup, Troy versus Nebraska. Nebraska's a 13 to a 13.5 point favorite. 137 to 138 is the total, and I did set a total of a 137.5. Right now, mostly seeing 138 plus. I'm going to be in on the under. You have a Nebraska team that is not really looking to push a lot of tempo in terms of total possessions per game. They are checking in right around about 261st in the country. And I know that Nebraska has hit the skids here a little bit. They're a team that doesn't grab a lot of second and third chances. They're outside the top 250 with regards to percentage of the missed shots that result in an offensive rebound, but I'm going to be willing to lay it with Nebraska. The Nebraska offense has been able to travel really well this season. They're a top 35 team in terms of points scored on a per possession basis in a road/neutral venue, and their play is really revolving around three-point shooting. They're a top 30 team with regards to percentage of their field goal attempts that come from three-point range, and they shoot away from them 34.7% from the outside, top 125 mark in the country. They're a top 10 team in terms of forcing teams to shoot from three-point range as well, and Troy is not a great outside shooting team. Games played away from them, they shoot just 31.9% from the outside. That's well outside the top 240 in all of college basketball. You've got a Troy team that they're looking to generate some turnovers, not as many as a season ago, but for Nebraska, they've been a top 20 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis. Now for Troy, I like the Campbell brothers, Kobe and Cooper Campbell. They combine for about 21.7 points per game. Between the two of them, they do shoot about 39% from three. And Thomas Dowd, 14.8 points, 10 rebounds per game. He's able to be rock solid down low. But now you've got Rick Mass on the flip side for Nebraska, who at 6'9" has great versatility, 13.5 points, nearly 7 boards. He shoots in the mid-30s from three-point range. Bryce Sanford is a 40% three-point shooter with about 18 points per game. And for Nebraska, they're just doing a lot of little things really, really well. They've been a team that has only allowed teams to shoot about 30% for three. That's a top 20 mark in the country. They're a top 10 team in terms of fewest free throw attempts allowed on a per possession basis as well. I think doing those little things helps Nebraska get the job done here. So Nebraska is a 15.5 point favorite. So advanced Nebraska on the bracket, willing to lay the 13 to 13.5 that I'm seeing at a 138 plus. I do like the under as well. Now we go to the 6-11 matchup. This is North Carolina and VCU doing battle. And with North Carolina, right now you are finding them as a favorite about 2.5 points. And the total is between 153.5 to 154.5, and with North Carolina, I'm going to be willing to lay it. I did set them as a 4.5 point favorite. Now, you do want to note that their top scorer is going to be out for this game, Caleb Wilson, but that's not news. He's been out for the last month plus. He was really incredible with 19 plus points, 8 plus rebounds per game, but we've got enough of a sample size to know what North Carolina is without him, and they've still been relatively sturdy, with Henry Visar being able to step up as the main man, 16.5 points, 8.7 rebounds, and he's a true 7-footer that is shooting 42% from three-point, so great versatility there. there. Now, Seth Trimble's not necessarily a great three-point shooter at about 29%, but he supplies the team with 14 points per game. Luka Bragovic has been able to throw in there about 36% three-point shooting for a North Carolina team that's pretty pedestrian with their three-point shooting, but they're doing a lot of little things well. Top 25 team in terms of opponents' two-point shooting percentage. They're in the top 40 with their own two-point shooting percentage, and they take care of the ball. For North Carolina, top 35 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per-possession basis. You've got a VCU team on the flip side that they have been able to do a nice job in terms of taking care of the ball themselves. They're about 72nd in the country, but for VCU, this is a team that I think is going to have a little bit of a tough time with the size overall down low, as for VCU, really don't have anyone on the roster that has been able to give you over 5.5 rebounds per game. Laser Djokovic, he stands right around about 6'10", 14 points, 5.5 boards, and does shoot about 35.5% from three. He's been your main man down low. Does give you a block per contest as well. Now you do have some versatility with Michael Beal, Barry Evans. These two guys give you 7.3 points, 5 rebounds per game apiece. And Nick Lewis, as a freshman, has been able to come on strong, shooting 35% from three-point range for a VCU team that overall they've been a top 75 team, shooting about 36.4% from three-point range, but it's a VCU team that as well is just a hair outside the top 100 with their own two-point shooting percentage. VCU has been outside the top 100 with regards to overall rebound percentage, neither here nor there in terms of generating turnovers. Have played some of their best basketball of the season here late, and it's a whole greater than some of its parts approach. You've got 7 different guys that give you at least 7.3 points per game, but in the end, I do think that VSAR and what you've got down low for North Carolina enough to be able to get it done. So I'm willing to lay up to 4 with North Carolina, advance them on my bracket, and did set a total of a 154.5, as you do have a VCU team that plays at a relatively good pace, 127th in terms of total possessions per game, so at a 154 or less, like the over, and I like North Carolina on the spread and to advance in my bracket. Now we go to the 3-4 team matchup. This is going to be Illinois and Penn, and right now with the Penn Quakers, they are finding themselves as high as a 23 to a 23.5 point underdog with regards to this total. Right now that is checking in anywhere between a 148.5 to a 149.5. We're now seeing 24.5s out there as well. I'm going to be willing to take the points with Penn. I set them as a 19.5 point underdog. I really wanted to try to get there with taking them on my bracket. I just could not do so. It's a little bit too much of an uphill battle because with Penn, they're outside the top 275 with regards to their own two-point shooting percentage and opponents' two-point shooting percentage. But with Penn, this is an amazing three-point shooting team. In games played away from home, entering into the Ivy League final, shooting 41.5% from three, numero uno in all of college basketball. And then they went 14 of 28 from three-point range in that game as well. TJ Power, boy, is he powerful. 16 points, 7.5 boards, had 44 in that Ivy League final. He shoots over 42% from three. Ethan Roberts has been able to give you 17 points per game. It's a little bit of a top-heavy team, but someone like an Augustus Gerhardt has now been able to give you about 5 or so rebounds per game. And for Penn, they do a nice job in terms of guarding the arc themselves. They're a top 75 team in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage. And for Illinois, there's a lot of little things that they're doing well. They're giving up the fewest free throw attempts per game. They're a top 25 team with their two-point shooting percentage. They're also dead last in terms of turnovers generated on a per-possession basis on defense, and that's a little bit scary with this team. Now, they do a nice job in terms of taking care of the ball themselves. Top 15 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per-possession basis. Keaton Wagler is a guy that I love. He shoots 40% from three, 18 points, 4.5 assists per game. David Mirkovic has been able to give you about 13.5 points per game, and in a pressure spot. Illinois does shoot 78.9% of the free throw line, but if you're coming down to late free throws, you're certainly going to be able to get there with the points with Penn. And for this bunch in Illinois, they take a lot of their shots from three-point range. As a matter of fact, they're a top 25 team with regards to percentage of their field goal attempts that come from three. They shoot 34.7% from three, which isn't awful, but it's right around about country average. You've had Andrei Stojakovic only shoot about 24% from three, so I did advance Illinois on my bracket, but being able to get the points that I'm getting right now with Penn, I'm going to be willing to take those points. Recognize that Illinois is outside the top 275 in terms of total possessions per game, but Illinois also a top 3 team in terms of points per possession, so on this total of 149.5, I also do like the over as well. Then we go to the 7-10 matchup. This is Texas A&M and St. Mary's. St. Mary's finds themselves as a favorite in a lot of places of about 2.5 points. 146 to 147 is the total line. I actually do like the over. I don't take a lot of overs in St. Mary's games, but this is a much better three-point shooting team than they've been in the past, and I did make the spread 4, so I'm also going to be willing to lay with them. St. Mary's a top 25 team in terms of their three-point shooting percentage. You've had Mikey Lewis, Joshua Dem do a nice job in terms of stepping up for this team. They both have been able to shoot in that neighborhood about 36 to 37.5% from three-point range, and for Dent, he gives you 13 points per game, and both shoot above 88% of the free throw line. This is a kicker for this team as well. St. Mary's, they shoot 80.5% at the free throw line. That is a top 2 mark in the country, so if this game is a little bit tight, they're able to pull it out, and St. Mary's always great on the glass. They're a top 25 team in terms of rebound percentage, top 35 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, it's a A&M team that's based around generating turnovers, but in games played away from home, they're well outside the top 125 in terms of turnovers per possession generated. Meanwhile, at home, they've been really a bow constrictor with that regard. Rylan Griffin has been very nice in terms of giving the team about 11.5 points, shoots 41% from three, and Texas A&M, they shoot about 36% from three-point range themselves, and it's been a three-point shooting percentage that has been able to travel relatively well in games played away from home. They do shoot about 34% from the outside. Rashawn Agee down low has been able to give the team right around about 14.5 points, 9 rebounds per game, but also for A&M, they're giving it up down low. They're outside the top 240 in terms of opponents' two-point shooting percentage, with having Paulius Marsoukas being able to give you 17-plus points, 7-plus rebounds per game. This is a bunch in A&M that is also in the bottom 100 in terms of free throw attempts allowed on a per-game basis. They're looking to push tempo. Top 50 team in terms of total possessions per game. I think that St. Mary's exploits that, gets the job done. Set St. Mary's as 4-point favorite, so advance them on my bracket, laid it with St. Mary's, and I do like the over. I did set my total at 152. Last game in this region is Idaho versus Houston, the 2:15 matchup, and with Houston, opened up as a 22.5 point favorite. Now we're seeing a lot of 22.5, seeing as high as a 23.5 out there. Total is between 135.5 to 136.5, and I did set my line at a 23.5, so 23 or less I'm willing to lay with Houston, and no, I did not advance Idaho in my bracket. Idaho's been able to do a nice job in terms of not allowing second and third chances. In terms of defensive rebound percentage, this unit is currently in the top 15 in the country, headlined by Jackson Rasmussen, who's been able to give you 14 points and just under 5 rebounds per game. And for Idaho, you've also been able to get Biko Johnson going. He's been able to give you quite a bit at the guard spot with about 12.5 points, 2.5 assists per game. Idaho, not bad in terms of taking care of the ball. They turn the ball over about 10.5 times per game. Country average team with regards to total possessions per game. Houston, they're still a top 10 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. They do such a great job on the turnover front. They're a top 10 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis on offense. Top 15 team in terms of generating those turnovers on defense. They're having Milo Suzan stepping up in a big way. He was rough with his three-point shooting to begin the season. In conference play, he was shooting over 40% from three-point range. And then Kingston Fleming, Emmanuel Sharp. These two guys combined for about 32 points per game. With Fleming's, he's been able to throw in their 5.3 assists per game. And then Sharp has been very sharp with his 37% three-point shooting. And for Houston, in a pressure spot, they do shoot about 77% of the free throw line. They've been allowing some second and third chances outside the top 100 with regards to defensive rebound percentage, but one of the better shot blocking teams down low, Joseph Tugler, giving you a block and a half per game. And I've just found with Kelvin Sampson teams, they just blow out the teams that they're supposed to blow out as well. So 23 or less, willing to lay with Houston. Obviously, if I advance them on my bracket, and with this Houston defense being as strong as it is, I'm in on the under. I did set my total at a 135.5, and now we go up to the West region. This is going to be Arizona. They're taking on Long Island, and right now Long Island is the biggest underdog that you're going to be finding on the board. As for Long Island, they're anywhere between a 31 to a 32 point underdog. Totals between 150.5 to a 152, and no, I am not going to call for the 16 seed to knock off the 1, but that said, I'm going to be willing to take the points here with the Sharks. They've got Rod Strickland. You may recall he used to play in the NBA for a very long time, and he's got a trio of guys, Jamal Fuller, Greg Gecko-Gordon, along with Malachi Davis, who've been able to combine for about 42 points per game. Gordon is not necessarily a great three-point shooter. Fuller has been that main guy, shooting about 40% from three-point. Just an LIU team that has been pretty solid with their three-point shooting. They're 51st in the country. Arizona's 56th, but for Arizona, they shoot closer to 36% from three-point range away from LIU. That falls to about 33.5% from the outside, and it has been an LIU team that's had a bunch of turnover issues. They are right now outside the top 3 in terms of ball security, overall about 175th in terms of points per possession, and Arizona should be able to win the battle down low, even without Long Island being a top 75 team with regards to offensive rebound percentage. You've right now got a pair of guys in Monte Uvis Krivas along Toby Awaka, who combined for about 17.4 rebounds per game. Braden Burries, for my money, has been one of the most improved players in all of college basketball. 16 points, 4.5 boards, shoots 37% from 3. Arizona is a bottom 40 team in terms of percentage of their field goal attempts that come from 3, but they shoot it quite well from 3. Top 5 team in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. Not a team that's going to generate a ton of turnovers, so I do think that that's going to be just enough for this Long Island team to be able to remain within the point spread. A Long Island team that they themselves have been a top 125 team in terms of generating some turnovers, and I do think that you're going to be able to get some open looks for both of these teams. Long Island in non-conference play was a top 100 team in terms of total possessions per game, so made a total of 154. I like the over. Obviously, advanced Arizona in my bracket, but took the up ton of points here with Long Island. I set them as an underdog of 26 points. And then in the 8-9 matchup, you've got Utah State, and they're going to be facing off against Villanova, and Utah State finds themselves as a mild favorite here of between 2 to 2.5 points, seeing some threes popping up there as well. Totals between 146.5 to 147.5, and I do like this total to the under. Set my total at a 142.5, as for Villanova, not necessarily an up-tempo team in terms of total possessions per game, 259th. Utah State is very much a mid-tempo team. Right now, they're checking in right around about 184th in terms of total possessions per game, but Utah State really good at generating turnovers away from home. Top 10 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, and they should be able to own things on the inside. Villanova has had a tough time with their interior defense outside the top 180 in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, and Utah State, top 15 team with their own 2-point shooting percentage. Mason Fosloff does a little bit of everything, shoots 40+% from 3, 15 points, 4 boards, pair of steals per contest, and then you've got MJ Collins, who's been able to throw in there about 17 points per game as well. Villanova's top scorer in non-conference play, Bryce Lindsey, has seen a little bit of a drop-off down to about 12 points per game, and I love Duke Brandon, 10.5 rebounds, 12.5 points per game, but I think that Gary Clark and company on the flip side for Utah State hold up here, and outside of Duke Brandon, you've only got one other player on the roster that gives you over 4 rebounds per game, Tyler Perkins, who's been really a Swiss Army knife guy, giving you a steal, 13.5 points, shoots 36.5% from 3, and let's say that this is a tight game. Villanova is shooting 69.4% the free throw line. That is outside the top 270 in all of college basketball. Villanova also outside the top 175 in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage as well. To the credit of Villanova, they do a solid job in terms of taking care of the ball, but I do think that for Utah State, in a little bit of a slowdown game, they find a way to cover this line and get the job done. Advance Utah State in my bracket, willing to lay up to 4 with Utah State on the spread, and like the under, semi total at a 142.5. Now we go to the 5-12 matchup. This is Wisconsin and High Point, and High Point, they are open and not be a low point, as they are right now an underdog of 9.5 to 10.5 points. Totals between 164 to 165.5, and I advanced Wisconsin on my bracket, and I'm actually willing to lay a relatively solid number here with Wisconsin, as I did set them as a favorite of 11.5 points, so I'm willing to go up to 11. For High Point, they've been able to do a great job on the turnover front. Top 10 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. On defense, on offense, top 10 team in terms of taking care of the ball, and this High Point offense has been super efficient, 9th in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. But that said, you've got a Wisconsin team that they can certainly be all over the place, but for Wisconsin, they themselves are a top 20 team in terms of points per possession away from home, and I do think that even though High Point is a top 100 team in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, Wisconsin is going to be able to find their looks. You've got Nick Boyd, John Blackwell, who have been able to combine for 39.6 points per game. Between the two of them, they're shooting about 37.5% from 3. In the Big Ten tournament, they were dealing with an injury to Nolan Winter. That's their top rebounder with about 8.5 rebounds per game. He should be back in this one, and being able to have a little bit of experience without him as big, as Austin Rapp stepped up in a big way. He had like 6 straight threes in that game against Michigan. He's able to haul in there about 4 rebounds per game, and with High Point being a team that's really generating turnovers, it's big that Wisconsin takes care of the ball. Top 10 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis. When they're sent to the free throw line, they shoot 78.6% at the free throw line. That's a top 20 mark in the country. Now, Wisconsin leaves something to be desired on defense. They're well outside the top 125 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, on a team that's going to generate a lot of turnovers, but with this High Point group, they do send you to the free throw line quite a bit. They're a top 10 team in terms of free throw attempts per game as well. They shoot 74.9% of the charity stripe. Hot Rob Martin along Scary Terry Anderson combined for 31.3 points per game, but neither guy shoots above 30% from 3. They're very much looking to pound the ball inside. For High Point, they have been a top 35 team with their own 2-point shooting percentage, right around about 100th with their 3-point shooting percentage, and Cameron Fletcher, one of their main scorers, was dealing with an injury throughout Big South play. Should be good to go here with about 12.5 points, 7 rebounds per game, but ball security I think is going to be big in this game for Wisconsin, and I think that allows them to get the job done. Willing to lay up to 11 points here with Wisconsin, advance them in my bracket, and made a total of 161.5, so here at the 164 plus. I do like that total to the under as well. And then in the 4-13 matchup, this is Hawaii going up against Arkansas. Arkansas is a 15 to a 16 point favorite. Right now that total is anywhere between 160.5 to a 161.5. I actually like the under. I set my total at a 154.5. Now these two teams are looking to fly, as Arkansas is 17th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Hawaii is 23rd, but this Hawaii defense has been absolutely remarkable. Not a team that's going to generate a lot of turnovers, and they themselves have had a tough time taking care of the ball, 318th in the country with regards to turnovers on a per possession basis on offense, but they go up against an Arkansas team that is only about 238th in the country in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, and for Hawaii, they do not give you clean looks. 8th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. They're a top 35 team in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, top 35 team with regards to their overall rebound percentage, and they've done a nice job guarding the arc. Teams shoot 30.5% from 3-point range against them in a road/neutral court venue. That's one thing Arkansas has been able to do outside the top 175 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but top 55 team with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. For Arkansas, they have the best player in this game, Darius Acuff, 22.5 points, 44% 3-point shooter, 6.5 assists per game. For an Arkansas team that's super efficient, top 5 team in the country in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis, top 10 team in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, but not a ton down low. Trevon Brazile gives you about 7 boards, 13 points per game, but only one other player in Malik Ewan really gives you over 5 rebounds per game that is healthy because Carter Knox has been dealing with the injury. Meanwhile, for Hawaii, you've got the big fish on your side, and the 7-footer in Isaac Johnson, 14 points, 6 boards. At 7 feet tall, he shoots about 32% from 3. Harry Ruyedev is that main 3-point shooter, about 39.5% from the outside. For Hawaii, they're a top 45 team in terms of free throw attempts on a per possession basis. With what they do down low, even though they're going to be a little bit cooked in the backcourt, I think that they hold in this game and they keep it under. So, semi-total 154.5, like the under. Took the points with Hawaii. On my bracket, though, I am going to be going with Arkansas. And now we go to the 6-11 matchup. This is BYU, and they're going to be taking on the winner of NC State versus Texas. And regardless of if it's Texas or NC State, I will take them over BYU. I'm just really not feeling this BYU team. You've got AJ DeBonsa, who's been able to supply 24 points per game. He's been absolutely amazing, but the only other player that is giving you much of anything is Robert Wright. And Robert Wright is right now Mr. Wright with about 18 points, 4.5 assists per game, and he shoots 42% from 3, but BYU is now outside the top 120 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, while the offense has went into a little bit of a rut without Saunders. The defense has been so bad, and whether it's Texas or NC State, both of these teams are in the top 30 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. Personally, I'm going to be taking NC State in this spot. They're anywhere between a 1-point favorite to a 1-point underdog, so we're sort of seeing dueling favorites here, and with regards to the total, it's right around about 159.5, 160, and I do like the over. Neither of these teams is necessarily playing at like a super aggressive pace. Texas, they're right around about 176th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. NC State is 121st, but for NC State, this team has been absolutely tremendous with their offense away from home. In a roadside-neutral court venue, they are 4th in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, and Texas, they're solid, but they're not quite as solid. Texas is a neither here nor there 3-point shooting team that just has not been able to get Traymar Mark going all season long, who's been giving you about 10 points, shoots in the range of about 30% from 3. Now, Jordan Pope, he'll give you about 14 points per game, and Dalen Swain, he's been the do-it-all guy. 17 points, 6 boards, throws in there 3 assists. Mateus Volkaitis has been able to give you about 7 rebounds per game, as well as Texas, really good on the glass, or a top 50 team with regards to rebound percentage. NC State going to be a little bit, shall we say, having an issue there because Van Allen Lubin gives you 7 rebounds per game. Outside that, you don't get a ton, but Kadir Copeland, 14 points, 6 assists, and he's been shooting about 40% from 3-point range. Darian Williams, he shoots about 40% from 3. He throws in there about 14 points per game as well. NC State is okay in terms of generating turnovers, but forte of this team is their outside shooting. They shoot 41.4% from 3-point range away from home. That is second in all of college basketball, and this is a bunch in Texas that they're going to give you a few good looks from 3-point range. Right now, they're allowing teams to shoot from 3-point range right around about 36%. That goes up 40.5% away from home, so I do like NC State in that first 4 matchup. I personally set them as a 4-point favorite, so whether it's as a favorite or a money line underdog, I'm in on them. I like the over, and regardless of if it's NC State or Texas, I will advance them on my bracket, so you can rest assured there. And then we go to the 3-4 team matchup. This is Gonzaga, and they're going to be facing off against Kennesaw State. We give our order to Lane Kiffin, go Owls, and for Kennesaw State, the Owls, they do find themselves as a pretty sizable underdog, as you're going to be catching them right around about 18.5 to 19.5 point underdogs, starting to see 20s pop up. Totals between 157 to a 158, and I do like the points here with Kennesaw State. Can't get there on the money line or anything like that, but I did set my line at a 16.5. I will advance Gonzaga on my bracket, and for Gonzaga, it's a little bit of a reversal of what we've seen in past years. Typically, it's a Gonzaga team that's so rock solid on offense, and then the defense is a little bit leaky. Gonzaga actually gives up the fewest points per possession of any team in all of college basketball. Now, in games played away from home, that goes to more like 20th in the country, but still, it's really good, and you've got a pair of teams teams that have been able to do a nice job on the glass. Kennesaw State, they're more around the top 100 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis away from home, but they're a top 40 team with regards to offensive rebound percentage. Franquan Sherman has done a nice job of that. He's been able to get this team right around about 8 or so rebounds per game. For Kennesaw, they lost their main point guard in Simeon Cottle due to that FBI probe earlier in the season. He was averaging 20 points per game, but RJ Johnson has stepped up in the interim. 14.5 points, 4 assists for a Kennesaw team that shoots about 35% from 3. That's just a hair above country average. Kennesaw, not a team that's going to generate a ton of turnovers, but for Gonzaga, do have to have some question marks with regards to the offense, because Braden Huff, who's been the number 2 scorer for the team this season, he's been continuing to deal with an injury, and if he gives you anything in the NCAA tournament, it might be very limited. He's already missed 15 games. You do have Graham Ike, who's been a dominant player, 19.5 points, 8 boards. He shoots about 35% from 3. And then Ty Grant Foster does a bit of everything, 11 points, 5 boards, about a steal per contest. But again, not a guy that's really going to give you a lot from the outside. Gonzaga as a whole is country average, shooting about 34% from 3. Gonzaga does a nice job winning the turnover battle. Top 30 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis on offense. Top 45 team in terms of generating them on defense, but do think that Kennesaw holds within the number, and I do think that even though both of these teams are top 50 in terms of total possessions per game, that you get an under, so I do like the under, so my total 156.5 for Gonzaga. Advance them on my bracket, but with regards to the point spread, took the points here with Kennesaw. Go Owls, and then we go with the 7-10 matchup. This is Missouri, and they're going to be taking on Miami, and right now Miami does find themselves as a slim favorite, as you're going to be laying with them between 1.5 and 2.5 points. Totals between 147.5 to 148.5. Did set my total 150.5. I do like the over. Miami, they're playing at a brisk pace, but not necessarily warp speed, about 158th in the country. In terms of total possessions per game, Missouri's 175th. Both of these teams do give it up from 3-point range, though. You've got a Missouri team that right now is the line teams that shoot nice and hearty 36% from the outside, 330th in all of college basketball. Miami, meanwhile, they're 273rd in opponent's 3-point shooting percentage at 35.4%, and even though Miami is very much built around their post play. They're a top 15 team with regards to rebound percentage. They are a team that ranks in the top 40 with their 2-point shooting percentage. They do have a little bit of pop from 3-point range with Trey Donaldson shooting 34.5% from 3, 16.5 points per game. Now Malik Renew, he's your main man. Comes over from Indiana, 19 points, 6.5 boards, shoots 35% from 3. True Washington, he's able to shoot 36% from the outside. He supplies about 12 points per contest as well, but Erdis Uday, what he's able to give you down low, a block and a half, about 9 rebounds per game. That's big against a Missouri team that has always been rough under Dennis Gates on the rebounding front. They're not a top 85 team with regards to rebound percentage, but also if they get put to the free throw line, they shoot just 68.5% of the free throw line. That's right around about 300th in all of college basketball. They've been good on the inside, top 45 team with regards to their 2-point shooting percentage, but pretty pedestrian at 35% from 3-point. Jaden Stone gives you about 38% 3-point shooting, 13 points per game, and Teal Barrett has come on strong here in the back half of the season with about 10 points per game. Mark Mitchell's that main guy with about 18 points, 5 boards, 3.5 assists, but he doesn't take a lot of threes, does shoot 35% on the ones that he takes, but for Missouri, they're also outside the top 250 in terms of ball security. Miami's been right around about 100th in terms of generating turnovers. I think that that's going to be their undoing. I do think that you get some late fouling in this game, so like the over semi total 150.5, and with Miami, both willing to lay the number here with them and advance them on my bracket. And then this is the last game out west. You've got Purdue taking on Queens NC, and Queens is finding themselves as a very sizable underdog, as right now they are a 24.5 to a 23.5 point underdog. 163.5 to 164.5 is the total, and I made a total of a 163.5, so 164 plus is my buy point on the under. Purdue is a bottom 35 team in terms of total possessions per game, but they're a top 2 team in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. Top 20 with their 3-point shooting percentage, as you've got Braden Smith, Fletcher Lawyer, combined for 27.8 points per game. Between these two guys, they shoot about 39% from 3. Smith gives you 9 assists per game, and for Purdue, they're most fragile on the inside. They're outside the top 200 with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, but top 50 team with regards to their defensive rebound percentage with Oscar Clough, Trey Kaufman-Renn, combining for 16 rebounds per game. And for Purdue, even though they do find themselves outside the top 100 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, they are actually significantly stronger when they're away from home rather than at home. And for Queens, this is a defense that is just a total mess. 339th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. You have a Queens NC team that, they're solid with their 3-point shooting at 35.9%. That drops at 33.9% away from home. And Queens actually was a top 3 team in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, overall 27th, but they're averaging about 17.9 points fewer per 100 possessions away from home rather than at home. And they don't necessarily have that dominant score. Now, they do have 6 different guys: Carson Schwieger, Chris Ashby, Avante Parker, Jordan Watford, you have Berman, and Nasir Mann. That all give you at least 10 points per game, and Mann is like the lone guy on the roster. It gives you over 5.5 rebounds per game with about 5.8 boards per contest, but for this bunch in Queens, they don't necessarily have that one guy that you can really look to at the end of a game as well. Berman and Watford have both been able to give you about 3.5 assists per game, which you love, and you've had Avante Parker at about 6'9", shoot about 42% from three-point range, but for this Purdue team, away from home, they've been able to guard the arc well. You've got a Queens NC team that's outside the top 285 with regards to opponents' 2-point and 3-point shooting percentage. They're getting blown away on the glass. I do think that Purdue is able to get the job done in a big way. Advanced Purdue on my bracket, 164 plus, I'm in on the under, but I'm going to lay up to 25 with Purdue on this point spread as well. Now we hit the Midwest region. This is Michigan going against the winner of UMBC versus Howard. Shocker, I don't think either UMBC or Howard takes down Michigan, but that said, if you take a look at the point spread in this first 4 matchup, Howard is right now a 1.5 to a 2.5 point underdog. Totals between 140.5 to a 141.5, and I do like Howard here on the money line. I did set them as a 2.5 point favorite. Howard has been an incredible defense. They are currently second in the country in terms of fewest points per possession allowed away from home. UMBC has been a solid defense as well. They're up to 45th in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but UMBC's numbers are a little bit warped. They played at bottom 20 strength of schedule in all of college basketball. Now, I will say this about UMBC. You've got DJ Turner up Armstrong, who's already at multiple buzzer beaters this year, 13 points per game. He shoots 42% from 3, and then Ace Valentine, along with Caden Diggs. These two guys combined to shoot about 37% from 3. Valentine has been the main point guard, 12 points, 4 assists per game for a team that does a great job taking care of the ball. For UMBC, top 40 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis, but we've got a Howard team that has been absolutely exceptional with regards to being able to guard the perimeter. They are currently allowing teams to shoot 28.1% from 3-point range in a roadside shoot court venue. That is a top 5 mark in the country, and they've been able to do a really good job in terms of generating turnovers, 12th in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis generated. UMBC is just 271st, and the undoing for Howard has been the fact that they have been sloppy with the ball. They're outside the top 3 with regards to their ball security, so not being under duress, that helps them out, and you've got a pair of guys that give you 17.1 points per game. Bryce Harris, Cedric Taylor, they both give you about 6.5 to 7 rebounds per game. Between the two of them, 5.3 assists per game, and then Cam Gill shoots 38% for 3 with about 10.5 points, 4.5 assists per game. With Howard, they've been able to do an okay job in terms of executing inside, but they do a really good job in terms of getting to the free throw line. Top 15 team in terms of free throw attempts on a per possession basis. You've got a Howard team that is looking to play, I would say, at a rather moderate pace, 101st in the country in terms of total possessions per game. UMBC is looking to slow it down at 287th, and for UMBC, they don't give themselves second and third chances on the glass. Outside the top 3 with regards to offensive rebound percentage, but they're also a top 75 team in terms of defensive rebound percentage, so I think that keeps it a little bit lower scoring. I do like the under, set by total 137.5, but I like Howard to advance in the first 4 and then get dump trucked by Michigan. And then in that 8-9 matchup, you've got St. Louis, and they're going to be taking on Georgia. Georgia is currently finding themselves as about a 2.5 point favorite, and the total on this game, you're going to be getting that anywhere between a 170 to a 171.5, and I do like St. Louis here on the money line. It's a top 30 team in terms of both points scored and points allowed on a per possession basis. They did have a rough end of the season. That very much needs to be pointed out, but that's up for the St. Louis group. You've got a whole's great with some of its parts approach. You've got everyone talking about Robbie Avila and what he's able to bring to the table, and he's been dealing with a little bit of plantar fascia. It seems like it's getting a little bit better though, but that said, outside of Robbie Avila, you still have a lot of guys that step up. 8 different players give you at least 6.8 points per game. Nobody on the roster gives you over 5.5 rebounds per game, but you've got 6 different guys that give you at least 3.9 rebounds per game, and for St. Louis, they're a tremendous 3-point shooting team at 40.1%. That's a top 5 mark in the country, with having Avila shooting over 40% from 3 himself, but then Deion Brown, 11 points, 5.5 boards. He shoots 40% from 3. Trey Green, he's able to give you 11 points, just under a steal, shoots 45.5% from the outside, and this is a St. Louis team that they play rock solid defense. They're going to get a lot of second and third chances against a Georgia team that is 323rd in terms of defensive rebound percentage. Now, Georgia does a good job with their shot blocking, second in the country with 6.1 blocks per contest. You've got a guy in Samatu Surreal who's able to give you 2.3 blocks, about 10 points per game, and then Blue Kane, Jeremiah Wilkerson. These are your main 2 scorers. Kane has been able to give you about 13 points, 5 rebounds per game, and Wilkerson, well, he's able to give you 35% 3-point shooting for a Georgia team that, In SEC play, they saw their three-point shooting percentage go way up to about 37%, but it's also a Georgia team that's just getting blown away on the glass. For Georgia, not generating the same amount of turnovers that they did towards the beginning part of the season, and that's been the undoing for St. Louis. They've been outside the top 200 with regards to their ball security, but that said, I do think that St. Louis steps up on defense, like them on the money line, advance St. Louis on my bracket, and do like the under. I set my total at a 164, so we now go to the 5-12 matchup. This is going to be Texas Tech and Akron doing battle, and Akron is finding themselves as an underdog anywhere between 7.5 to 8 points. So on this game, it is 155.5 to 156.5. I said Akron is a 1.5 point favorite. I'm advancing them on my bracket, and I'm taking them on the money line. It's an Akron team as a top 10 team in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, and they do an okay job generating turnovers. Top 85 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. Fully recognize that this is not necessarily the most stout defense in the world, but you're able to make up for that with the fact that this team shoots 38.5% from three-point range, top 15 mark in the country. Now, Texas Tech has been even better. They shoot about 39.3% from three, top 5 mark in the country, but Christian Anderson get a little bit banged up during the Big 12 Conference Tournament. Now, he should be good to go here, and that's going to be big because he right now, with JT Toppin being out, is your top scorer. 19 points, 7.5 assists, shoots 42.5% from three, and then Donovan Atwell, he shoots 45.5% from three. It's a Texas Tech team that's been incredibly efficient on the offensive side of things, but they don't get to the free throw line. They're outside the top 320 in terms of free throws attempted on a per possession basis. If they need to go down low because they're such a great three-point shooting team, they're also outside the top 100 with their own two-point shooting percentage, and they're outside the top 125 in terms of opponents' two-point shooting percentage. While Akron is such a good three-point shooting team, they're a little bit more dimensional with having Armani Lyles go down low for 14.5 points, 8 rebounds per game. Akron is a top 20 team with their own two-point shooting percentage, top 75 group with regards to opponents' two-point shooting percentage. Now, we'll say they give it up from three. They are allowing teams to shoot 35% for three, but again, Christian Anderson, one of your main three-point shooters, what are you going to be able to get out of him? You've got Tavari Johnson for the Akron team, give you 20 points. He shoots 37.5% from three. Shema Scott shoots 42% from three-point. To the credit of Texas Tech, top 85 team in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage, but they've been outside the top 85 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. I did set my total 155.5. Texas Tech, I think, might need to slow down a little bit with the Anderson injury, so at a 156 plus, I like the under, but I advance Akron on my bracket, and I like them outright on the money line. In the 4-13 matchup, you've got Hofstra, and they're going to be taking on Alabama. Alabama's a 13.5 to a 14-point favorite. Total is 161.5, and for my bracket, I took Hofstra. Now, I can't get there on the money line with them. I'm going to take the points, though. I did set Hofstra as a 7-point underdog. This is one of those where you have to fill out your bracket a little bit differently than you're going to take money lines, what have you. I do believe that with your bracket, you need to take some chances, and this is a chance that I'm going to be willing to take, and I'm taking it on Cruz Davis because he has been absolutely tremendous for this Hofstra team. He's a mid-major scorer of 20.5 points, 4.5 assists, shoots 40% from three for a Hofstra team then has absolutely lit it up from three-point range. They shoot as a collective about 37% from three-point range. That is a top 50 mark in the country. That goes up to 37.6% in games played away from home. Meanwhile, Alabama, they take over 55% of their field goal attempts from three-point range. That is a top 3 mark in the country. They shoot about 35.8% from three-point range, but when they need to go down low, they're not going to be able to get those looks. Hofstra is a top 10 team in the country with regards to opponents' two-point shooting percentage, and to the credit of Alabama, they're not necessarily the worst three-point shooting defense in the country. They're about 156th. Teams shoot about 33.5% from three against them. Hofstra, though, they allow you to shoot 32.3% from three. That is a top 80 mark in the country. LeBaron Filan is rock solid for this Alabama team as he's been able to supply 20 points. He shoots near 40% from three-point range. Then you've had so many mixers and shakers be able to step up when Latrell Wrightsell has actually been healthy because he's out with a few ailments. He's been able to give you double figures. He shoots it well from three. Aiden Sherrill throws in there about 11 points, 6.5 boards. Aiden Holloway throws in there 17 points per contest as well. But for Alabama, they just allow way too many clean possessions. Top 30 team in terms of protecting the ball themselves, outside the top 340 in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. And for Hofstra, they're not a team that's going to put you under duress either. They give up some second and third chances on the glass, but so does Alabama. And with this bunch in Hofstra having down low a guy that is actually last name Sunday, Silas Sunday, give you about 5 points, 7 boards as a true 7-footer. Throws in there a block per contest, having Preston Edman, James Patterson in the backcourt being able to help out Mr. Cruz Davis with Edman. He shoots about 38.5% from three. Patterson, 5.5 boards, just does a little bit of everything to flow the offense. I think Hofstra has a chance to be able to get the job done. Going to take the points on the spread, but I do think that Hofstra gives them a scare. I advance Hofstra on my bracket. I set my total at 165. You've got an Alabama team that is a top 10 team in terms of total possession possessions per game, so I like the over, and I did advance Hofstra on my bracket to go along with the points. Now in the 6 versus 11 matchup, it's Tennessee going up against the winner of Miami of Ohio versus SMU. Regardless of if it's Miami of Ohio or SMU, I am going to advance Tennessee in my bracket. They're a top 45 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, lead the country in terms of offensive rebound percentage. I don't think either of these teams are going to be able to take down Tennessee, so I will advance Tennessee, but in this play-in game, I do like Miami of Ohio here. They're currently an underdog of about 7.5 to 8.5 points, and you're finding that total at about a 164.5, and I'm just going to take Miami of Ohio right on the money line. And who's SMU to be laying 7.5 points in the state of Ohio? This is essentially a home game for Miami of Ohio, and for Miami of Ohio, recognize that the defense isn't amazing, but in games played away from home, top 100 team in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage. SMU, they are allowing teams to shoot 33.9% from three, 174th in all of college basketball. And you've got a Miami of Ohio team that's been absolutely rock solid with their offense. They're a top 25 team in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. Everyone talks about the three-point shooting, and rightfully so, but they're also a top 10 team with their two-point shooting percentage, while in games played away from home, they shoot 37.9% from the outside for Miami of Ohio. They got just a lot of guys in general they're able to step up for this team, as you've had Luke Skoljak be really the main point guard for this team, 10.5 points, 5 assists per game, and then Brent Byers, Peter Suter, they both give you between 14 to 15 points per game between the two of them. They're shooting about 41.5% per three. They dealt with an injury to Evan Opsero early on during the season. No matter, Antoine Woolfolk is able to give you 10.5 rebounds per game. Now, the one place where Miami of Ohio is vulnerable is down low. They are only grabbing about 23% of their misses as an offensive rebound. That's outside the top 320 in all of college basketball. Meanwhile, Kevin Miller, I refuse to call him Boopy. He's been able to boop teams with give you about 19 points, 6.5 assists per game, shoots 41% from three. And I mean, SMU has been one of the better three-point shooting teams in all of college basketball as well. They're 23rd in the country, but that does go down to about 35.3% away from home compared to 39.3% at home. You've had Jerron Pierre be a nice number 2 scorer with about 17.5 points, shoots 38% from three. BJ Edwards, who has been dealing with an injury, has missed the last 5 games. He should be good to go here, and that's big because he actually generates for the team 2.3 steals per game. But SMU, even with him out/in, they've just been rough on defense in general. They're outside the top 200 with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. SMU outside the top 175. In terms of defensive rebound percentage, they're okay in terms of giving themselves second and third chances with Samat Yedoglu, give you about 11 points, 8 rebounds per game. But I think Miami of Ohio, having that home crowd against them, finally being able to get a quad 1 game, I think that they're going to relish the opportunity and get it done here. So I set a total of a 165 here at the 164.5. Like the over, and I'm advancing Miami of Ohio, and I like them outright on the money line in this play-in matchup. And then in the 3 versus 4 team matchup, you've got Virginia. They're going to be taking on Wright State. Wright State, they hope to be the right side as they're a sizable underdog of 18.5 to 17.5 points. 144.5 to 145.5 is the total line. I do like the points here with Wright State. Wright State has been one of the best three-point shooting teams away from home in all of college basketball. Wright State, from three-point range when they're at home, they're only shooting in that neighborhood about like 29 to 30% from three. That goes up to 40.8% away from home, a top 10 mark in the country. And Michael Cooper has been a really good guy for this Wright State team. He's a freshman that has been spending time as a starter, coming out off the bench. It's been a 50-50 approach, 13 points per game. He shoots 36% from three. And then the ancillary guys, and Dominic Pangonis, Saul McCaglin, they both combine for about 19 points per game. They're shooting about 38.5% from three. For Wright State, they're not necessarily the most sturdy team on the glass, but they don't allow a ton of second and third chances. Top 125 team in terms of rebound percentage, with having one main rebounder, Michael Imabaraje, who's been able to give you about 12.7 rebounds per game. And then for Virginia, Jonah Grunlow, Ogana, and Yasu, they're just dominant down low. 5 blocks per contest, but I mean, Wright State has been a top 55 team with their shot blocking as well. Kellen Pickett and Andre Holden have been able to give you 2.5 blocks per game. For Virginia, they're a solid three-point shooting team, but they're not necessarily an amazing three-point shooting team. I like the fact that the top scorer on Theodorus Ritter give you about 15.6 boards, has versatility to be able to pop it at about 34% from three. Sam Lewis shoots 40% from three, and Jakari White 43% from the outside. Between Lewis and Mr. White, they've been able to combine for about 19.5 points per game. And Virginia is outside the top 200 with regards to total possessions per game. Wright State about country average with regards to their tempo. With Virginia, very good in terms of their shooting percentages on defense. Top 45 team in terms of opponents' 2-point and 3-point shooting percentage. They don't really generate a lot of turnovers, so that means that Wright State should be able to get some good looks here. I do like Wright State with the points. I'm not going to advance them on my bracket, but I'm going to be willing to take the points. Set my total at a 137.5. Right now, this total is 144.5, 145.5. I like the under, as I did set my total at a a 137.5, and then last two games in the round of 64. This is going to be the 7 versus 10 matchup, Santa Clara versus Kentucky. Kentucky opened up as a slim favorite. They've been bet up a little bit here recently. They're now between a 3.5 to a 4.5 point favorite. Totals between 160.5 to 161.5. I like Santa Clara to advance on my bracket, and I like Santa Clara outright on the money line, as I did set them as a 2-point favorite in this ordeal. With Santa Clara, I do think that just the overall completeness of this team is amazing. They've been a relatively country average team with their 3-point shooting percentage, but top 25 team in terms of percentage of their missed shots that resulted in an offensive rebound, top 30 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, to the cry of Kentucky, top 75 team in terms of their ball security, and Malachi Moreno down low has been able to give you about 8.5 points, 6.5 rebounds per game. You've got Mohamed Diabate with about 8 points, 5 boards. And for Kentucky, even though the 3-point shooting percentage has been rather pedestrian, Ortega Owe is able to give you about 18 points per game, shoots in the mid-30s from 3. Denzel Aberdeen, double-figure score, shoots about 35% from 3. They still have been a relatively efficient offense, 53rd in the country in terms of points scored on a per-possession basis. Santa Clara, though, is 24th with the way that they get those second and third chances. You've got a guy in Jake Amsinger who's been able to do a nice job, give you about 6.5 points, 5 boards, 3 assists per game. Christian Hammond, Elijah Mai, they combine for about 30 points per game. With Hammond, he's been able to shoot 40% from 3, and for Santa Clara, good down low. Top 55 team with their 2-point shooting percentage. We'll say they're outside the top 225 in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, but for this Kentucky team, they've had a tough time executing all season long, and for this Santa Clara team, with the fact that they've been able to generate as many turnovers as they do, I think that they get the job done. So I said Santa Clara is a 2.5 point favorite. I like them on the money line. Maybe my total 154.5. Kentucky's outside the top 125 in terms of total possessions per game, so I do think they get a slowdown. I like the under, and then this is the last game before I hit a break in. We go through the round of 32 and beyond. This is Tennessee State. They're going to be taking on Iowa State. Iowa State 24.5 to 25.5 point favorites. 148 to 149 is the total. And for Tennessee State, I made them an 18.5 point underdog. I'm going to be willing to take the points. For Tennessee State, they're not a team that's going to light you up from 3. They are shooting just 33.7% from 3. Meanwhile, Iowa State with Milan Mimoselovic shooting 50% from 3 with his 15 plus points per contest. They are shooting 38.7%. That's a top 15 mark in the country. But Nolan Smith, yes, that Nolan Smith of Duke fame, he's done a really good job in terms of being able to right the ship here at Tennessee State. As Tennessee State, a top 25 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis and games played away from home. Teams are shooting just 32% from 3 against them. That's a top 100 mark in the country. Dante Harris, who was actually a part of that Georgetown team that made the NCAA tournament many years ago, 4.5 assists, 12 points per game. Aaron Nakaruma has been able to give you 17.5 points, 5 boards, 3 assists. Great versatility while shooting 35% from 3. And for the Tennessee State team, they knock down their free throws. They shoot 76.5% at the free throw line. Iowa State is shooting less than 68% at the free throw line. That's outside the top 320 in the country. Now, they generate tons of turnovers. Top 10 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis with Tamon Lipsby, the quarterback of the defense, 13 points, 5 assists, 2 steals per contest. Joshua Jefferson has great versatility, 17 points, 7.5 boards, 5 assists. Love what he brings to the table, but I think that this is too lofty of a number. Now, I'm advancing Iowa State in my bracket, but I'm going to be able to take the north of 20 points here with Tennessee State, made them an 18.5 point underdog. Set my total here at a 146.5, so 148 plus. I do like the under, and now we are going to go into my bracket picks for the round of 32 and beyond on the flip side, right here on Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Peterson. Now, I'm part of the Beast and Family Podcast.
You know, this is one of those topics that no one really wants to think about, but if you're a parent, a homeowner, married, or helping take care of aging parents, it's something that honestly deserves a little attention. I'm talking about estate planning. And before you tune out thinking it's complicated or expensive, that's actually why I want to mention Trust and Will. Trust and Will makes estate planning feel way less intimidating than it sounds. They offer modern, attorney-designed wills and trusts that you can create online. And the process is surprisingly straightforward. In fact, you can create a will in as little as 30 minutes. That includes things like guardianship for your kids or pets, how your assets are distributed, and even healthcare directives. Don't wait until it's too late. Protect your loved ones with Trust and Will, the most trusted name in online estate planning. Go to trustandwill.com/future to get 20% off. That's trustandwill.com/future for 20% off. trustandwill.com/future.
And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. All right, unfortunately, I don't have any bets on the round of 32 and beyond because these matchups are TBD. There's no way to be able to bet them, so that'll be coming in future days when hopefully we get all these bracket picks correct, but That said, let's dive into the rest of my bracket. This is a round of 32 and beyond. We're going to go east, then south, then west, then midwest, just like we did in the first segment. We got the 1A matchup between Duke versus Ohio State, and I do think that Duke is going to be able to advance here. I recognize that the Cameron Foster injury is still an issue, but you got a team that's number one in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. If you look at the overall offensive efficiency, Duke might not be quite number one, but they're number 4 in the country, and Ohio State has been a rock-solid offense. Right now, 32nd in terms of points per possession, but they are a team that they can get a little bit, shall we say, cooked on the inside. They're outside the top 175 with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. Cameron Boozer's giving you 22 plus points, 10 plus rebounds per game. Patrick Ngongba, even if he doesn't play in round 1, he should be good to go here. He's able to give you a block plus per contest. I like the versatility of Dame Sarin, even though John Mobley has been a 40 plus % 3-point shooter for an Ohio State team that's been quite good from the outside here recently. You've got a Duke team that is not going to give you a lot of good looks from 3-point range. Right now, they are allowing teams to shoot from 3-point range only about 29.9% away from top 20 mark in the country. Just too much Duke here. I've got them advancing to the Sweet 16, and they'll take on the winner of Kansas versus St. John's. Again, with Kansas, what are you going to be able to get out of Darren Peterson? It feels like ever since he's been getting 30-plus minutes, the team has been worse. Like, Kansas is a top 40 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. I like Flory Batunga down low, who's able to give you 2.5 blocks per contest. Trey White has been shooting 40-plus % from 3. Melvin Council is a stretchy suffer, but you've got a St. John's team that does a nice job in terms of generating turnovers. Top 45 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. Zuby Ejiofor, 16 points, 7 boards. He does a little bit of everything. St. John's, not the best shooting team. They're outside the top 150, whether it's a 2-point shooting percentage and 3-point shooting percentage. They are menaces on the glass, though. They're a top 30 team with regards to percentage of their missed shots that result in an offensive rebound. You've been able to get 6+ rebounds per game. Dylan Mitchell, you've got Bryce Hopkins giving you some versatility. Kansas does give up a few second and third chances as well. With this Kansas group, in terms of defensive rebound percentage, 144th in the country. In games played away from home, teams grab 29.3% of their missed shots as an offensive rebound. Just been disappointed with Kansas ever since Peterson has come back. So I'm going to be willing to advance St. John's to the Sweet 16. And then in the 11 versus 3 matchup, you've got South Florida going up against Michigan State. South Florida, I think, could be rather live here. You've got Isaiah Nelson down low, who's been able to give you 15 points, 9 rebounds per game. Joseph Pignon is a high 33-point shooter. CJ Brown has been able to give you about 5 assists per game. I just think that Michigan State is going to be able to manhandle this game. South Florida's lifeblood is offensive rebounds. Top 20 team in terms of percentage of their missed shots that result in an offensive rebound in games played away from home. Michigan State does not give up those second and third chances. They are numero uno in all of college basketball in terms of defensive rebound percentage in games played away from home. Teams grab 19.4% of their misses as an offensive rebound. You got Jackson Kaler, who's been able to give you over 12 points per game. Shoots 40% from 3. Jeremy Fears is able to throw in their 9 assists per contest. Now, South Florida relatively okay in terms of being able to generate turnovers, but with Michigan State, you're not going to get a lot of good looks off of them. Tom Izzo is such a great March coach. This is the first time that Brian Hodgson is in the NCAA tournament, so I advance Michigan State here, and then they'll face off against the winner of UCLA versus UConn. I've got Connecticut advancing for this UCLA group. I mean, it's a team that just has not been the same away from home rather than at home, and they're a good 3-point shooting team. They're a top 25 team with regards to their 3-point shooting percentage. They're outside the top 175 with their own 2-point shooting percentage, outside the top 200 in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, and this UConn defense has been amazing at guarding the arc. In games played away from home, teams shoot 28.6% from 3 against them. That's number 5 in all of college basketball. Mambo number 5. And then for this UCLA group, Tyler Bilodeau, Donovan Dent, they should be playing in the NCAA tournament. They're dealing with a few ailments. For UConn, you've got a guy that is able to do a little bit of everything in Silas Demery, who's been able to give you about 5 assists, 6 boards, double-figure amount of points. Alex Karaman was on those 2 teams that won the title. He's been able to give you 13 points, shoots it well from 3. Solo ball is not shot it well from 3, but he still gives you 13 points per game. UConn, I think, is just too efficient here in UCLA, not generating turnovers the way that they did in the past. We've got UConn advancing to the Sweet 16. You go down to the South region. This is going to be Florida versus Clemson in the 1-8 matchup. For Clemson, they do a lot of little things well. Top 45 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but now they're without their number 2 rebounder, Carter Willing. Florida leads the country in terms of overall rebound percentage. Now, Florida's a bad 3-point shooting team outside the top 3 with that regard. Not like Clemson is amazing with regards to their shooting as well. As a matter of fact, one of the fortes of Clemson is not allowing teams to be able to pop it from 3. Well, Boogie Flan, Xavier Lee, they both should less than 30% from three. Your lone three-point shooters, Urban Cloves are, but having Ruben Chinyelu giving you about 11.5 rebounds per game. Thomas Hogg gives you 15 plus points, 7 plus rebounds per game. For Clemson, now being a whole greater than the sum of its parts team and losing two guys that average at least 8 points per game, with Zach Foster still being out as well, I think that that's too much for them to overcome. So I've got Florida advancing, and they will take on the winner of Vanderbilt versus Nebraska. I like Vanderbilt here. Vanderbilt just seems to have found something ever since Duke Miles has come back. A lot of their losses came without him. Guy gives you 2.5 steals, shoots in the high 30s from three, 15 plus points per game. And then you got the Tylers. Tyler Nichols able to give you 14 points on 40 plus % three-point shooting. Tyler Tanner throws in their 2 plus steals, 19 plus points per contest. And Nebraska, they really live and die by the three. They're a top 10 team in terms of percentage of opponents' field goal attempts that come from three-point range. Top 20 in terms of percentage of their own field goal attempts that come from three. And for Vanderbilt, where you want to hurt them is on the inside, as Vanderbilt has been a pretty good three-point shooting defense, allowing teams to shoot about 32.2% from the outside. Now, I like what Rink Mass brings to the table. He's able to give you 13.6 rebounds per game. Price Sanford has been able to shoot 40% from three, but I think that Vanderbilt's backcourt play is just better. Both of these teams are top 50 teams in terms of taking care of the ball. Nebraska does not fight for second and third chances, and I do think that Jalen Washington and Devin McLaughlin wins the battle down low, so I've got Vanderbilt advancing in this matchup. And then on the bottom half of the South, it's North Carolina versus Illinois in the 3-6 matchup. I really want to take North Carolina here, but with having Caleb Wilson being out, that's just rough. Now, I still do like the fact that you're able to get about 18 plus points, right around about 6 rebounds per game out of Henry Visar, who's been able to shoot 40% from three. But outside of him, you don't have a lot of three-point shooting. Seth Trimble's outside the 30 percentile with regards to his three-point shooting percentage. North Carolina, they're just like Illinois. They don't generate turnovers. These are two of the bottom 30 teams at all of college basketball in terms of turnovers generated on a per-possession basis. And if this is a tight game, North Carolina shoots less than 70% at the free throw line. That's outside the top 3 with that regard. Illinois is actually number 1 in the country in terms of points per possession. They now have Kylan Boswell back. Keaton Wagler gives you 18 plus points. He shoots nearly 40% from 3-point. North Carolina, in games played away from home, they're allowing teams to shoot over 37% from three. Illinois is attempting more shots from 3-point range rather than 2-point range. I think that that's going to be an issue. North Carolina, in my opinion, just not have the guard play to be able to match up, and now with Wilson out of the fold, it's just too much ass. So I do like Illinois in this spot, and then they take on the winner of St. Mary's versus Houston. I think Houston's quest to get back to the title ends here. I've got St. Mary's. St. Mary's, a top 15 team with regards to rebound percentage. For Houston, even though this is a team that's great on the turnover front, top 5 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis on offense, on defense in the top 15 in terms of generating turnovers, they're giving teams a lot of second and third chances. That's very uncharacteristic of Houston. Houston is 161st in terms of opponents' offensive rebound percentage. They're allowing teams to grab 29% of their misses as an offensive rebound in a road/neutral venue. For St. Mary's, you have to like Paulius Marsoukas down low, 17 plus points, 9 plus rebounds per game. You've got a guy in Josh Dent who's shooting 40% from three. He and Mikey Lewis combined for 30 plus points per game. For St. Mary's, they shoot over 80% of the free throw line. That leads the country, and this is a Houston team that, while they do a lot of great things on defense, they are going to be very willing to get physical with you to be able to generate those turnovers, like what Milo Suzanne brings to the table. Has shot over 40% from three in conference play, 11 points per game. And then Kingston Flemings, Emmanuel Sharp, they combine for about 32 points per game and 38% three-point shooting, but still, it's a Houston team that's outside the top 225 in terms of free throw attempts allowed on a per possession basis. They are going to give you a few good looks from 3-point range as well, and with the St. Mary's team being a top 40 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, I advance St. Mary's here. So we've got St. Mary's into the Sweet 16. Now we head up to the West region. This is Arizona versus Utah State. I like Utah State's ability to generate turnovers. I just don't think that they hold up on the glass against Toby Awaka and Monte Krivas. For Arizona, this is a top 5 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. They're a top 10 team in terms of overall rebound percentage, and Utah State is strong down low. They're a top 15 team with their 2-point shooting percentage. The 3-point shooting has been a little bit neither here nor there, but for Utah State, I recognize that Arizona doesn't take a ton of threes, but when Jaden Bradley along with Anthony DeRosa need to put it up from three, both guys shoot above 38% from three. In games played away from home, Utah State is outside the top 175 in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, with them giving up as many second and third chances as they do. 265th with regards to their defensive rebound percentage. Cole Pete is able to give you 14 plus points per game, even though I like MJ Collins give you 17 points per game. Mason Fosloff, 14 points, 2.5 steals per contest. It's an Arizona team that I think is going to do a relatively solid job in terms of taking care of the ball, and Arizona does not allow too many looks on the inside. They are second in the country in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, so I've got Arizona surviving and advancing. In this one, they'll play the winner of Wisconsin versus Arkansas, and I've got Wisconsin. Now, Darius Acuff is the best player in this game, 22.5 points, and he shoots it really well from three-point range, and neither of these defenses are great. You've got a Wisconsin team that, in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, is 212th in the country, but Arkansas can get wrecked here, 263rd, and I will say for Arkansas, they've been a relatively good three-point shooting defense. They're a top 65 team in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage, but Wisconsin is able to match the efficiency of Arkansas. Both of these teams are in the top 10 in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis. Wisconsin, when they go to the free throw line, they shoot over 78% at the free throw line. Their top rebounder in Nolan Winter should be back in the fold in this game as well, and this is a Arkansas team that they sometimes get a little bit too physical for their own good. They rank outside the top 85 in terms of free throw attempts allowed on a per possession basis. Wisconsin just continues to do the little things well. They really don't put you at the free throw line a ton, with this Wisconsin group being as, shall we say, Jekyll and Hyde as they are. They could lose this game by 30. They could win it outright. I think that they win it outright with really nobody other than Trevon Brazile. Give you too much down low for this Arkansas team. And then we've got the play-in winner of Texas versus NC State going against Gonzaga, and I do have to throw this in here. I need NC State to win in order to take them over Gonzaga. I would not take Texas over Gonzaga. Texas is just too fragile of a team, but NC State is a team that's able to really light it up on offense. Top 5 team in terms of three-point shooting percentage away from home, top 10 team in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. Again, with Gonzaga, what are you going to be able to get out of Braden Huff, if anything whatsoever, as he's missed 15 games? Graham Ike is able to give you 19 points per game, and Gonzaga, while they are number 1 in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, they give up over 17.5 points more per 100 possessions away from home rather than at home. Tying Graham Foster really doesn't give you a lot from the outside. Darian Williams shoots nearly 40% from 3 with 14 plus points per game. Now, I recognize that other than Van Allen Lubin, who gives you 7 rebounds per game, not a ton down low, but Kadir Copeland is a 6'6", a little bit of a point forward that's able to give you over 5 assists. He gives you about 13 points per game. NC State, one of the best teams in terms of taking care of the ball in all of college basketball. I advance NC State as long as they win that play-in matchup over Gonzaga. Again, if it's Texas, would be advancing Gonzaga here, and then they play the winner of Miami versus Purdue. I've got Purdue. Miami has been outside the top 275 with your opponent's three-point shooting percentage. Good team down low, top 25 team in terms of rebound percentage with Malik Renew. Give you 18 plus points, 6 plus rebounds per game. Ernest Uday doesn't give you a lot of scoring, but 9 boards, about a block and a half per contest. But having Oscar Clough, Trey Kaufman-Renn combined for about 16 rebounds per game, and Miami's going to be able to find some holes down low. This Purdue team is outside the top 200 with regards to opponent's 2-point shooting percentage, but with Purdue being second in points per possession, you've got Braden Smith, Fletcher Lawyer combined shoot over 38% from 3, being as efficient as they are. I think Purdue gets the job done, so we've got them advancing over Miami. In the Midwest region, it's Michigan versus St. Louis, and I haven't loved what I've seen out of Michigan recently, but for St. Louis, they lost by 25 points to George Mason about a week and a half ago. For Michigan, they're built down low. They're a top 10 team with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage and their own 2-point shooting percentage. For St. Louis, they're actually a surprisingly good defense, and for St. Louis, they've been able to shoot it well from 3, over 41%. That's a top 10 mark in all of college basketball, and though the Michigan 3-point shooting has waned, LJ Kaysen being out of the fold, that has hurt them quite a bit. This team does a great job in terms of guarding the arc. Right now, Michigan is allowing teams to shoot from 3-point range right around about 30.2%. That is a top 15 mark in the country, and with Michigan having Elliot Kadu cutting down on the turnovers, as both of these teams, their biggest issue has been turnovers. Both of these teams outside the top 180 in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis. It's a St. Louis team that, they're okay in terms of generating turnovers. They're not necessarily amazing. Michigan, I'm not saying that they're some sort of an incredible turnover team as well, turning 55th in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis, but having 3 guys, the XL Lenderborg, Ade Mera, along with Morris Johnson, I'll give you over 6.7 rebounds per game between the 3 of them, 5 plus blocks per game, even though you've got Kareem Abdul-Jabbar himself and Robbie Avila down low. I do think that Michigan is able to stave off of elimination. They advance here, and then they play the winner of the 12-13 Akron versus Hofstra matchup, and I've got Akron. They just shoot it so well from 3. Top 15 team with regards to 3-point shooting percentage. Tavari Johnson, he's able to give you 20 plus points per game. Now, Cruz Davis on the flip side does the same, and this is a bunch in Hofstra that's a top 15 team with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. That said, for Akron, they're the better team in terms of generating turnovers, top 100 team with this regard. Hofstra really doesn't put you under too much duress. Hofstra is a team that's going to give you some second and third chances as well. In terms of defensive rebound percentage, you've got a Hofstra team that is checking in right in that neighborhood of about 170th in all of college basketball, with having Armani Lyles down low for Akron, 14 plus points, 8 plus rebounds per game. Akron is a top 10 team in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, and they're going to look to bump up the tempo. Top 75 team in terms of total possessions per game. I think that they do just enough in what I think would be a great matchup to be able to get by here. So I got Akron advancing to the Sweet 16, and then it's Tennessee versus Virginia. Virginia has been so good on the glass, top 15 team with regards to their offensive rebound percentage. Now Tennessee away from home, number one in the country with this regard. Felix Apara has been able to give you 5.5 boards over a block per contest. You've got Nate Amon, who in conference play was averaging over 20 plus points per game. Tennessee just too sloppy though. For Virginia, they're not really going to put you under duress, but Tennessee outside the top 225 with regards to turnovers on a per possession basis. It's a Virginia team that has been getting quite a bit out of their backcourt. Chance Mallory has been able to give you double figures. You've got a guy in Sam Wright who's been able to shoot over 40% from three. Darius Ritter, 15.5 points, 6 rebounds per game. And with this Virginia team, they just don't allow good looks from either the inside or the outside. For Virginia, they've been a top 50 team with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. They are 7th in the country in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. Tennessee has been neither here nor there with their 3-point shooting and games played away from home. Tennessee outside the top 100 with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. So I did advance Virginia here, and for Virginia, they take on the winner of Santa Clara versus Iowa State. As much as I want to take Santa Clara, top 25 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, top 30 team with regards to rebound percentage, and again, Iowa State, they shoot less than 68% of the free throw line outside the top 300. I do think that they survive here, as Santa Clara is vulnerable on the inside outside the top 200 with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, with Tamon Lipsby being able to give you over 2 steals, 13 points per game. Milan Mimoselovic has been shooting over 40% from three. As a matter of fact, closer to 50% from three-point range. And Iowa State has been able to hold their own down low. They're a top 100 team with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage away from home. They're the better team in terms of generating turnovers. I think that there's just a little bit too much here for Iowa State to have Iowa State advancing to the Sweet 16. Now, in the Sweet 16, you've got Duke versus St. John's, and I do think that not having Caleb Foster out there is big, but for St. John's, I just don't think that they shoot it quite well enough to be able to get past. For Duke, they should have Patrick Ngongba back by this game. For St. John's, they've been incredible in terms of generating turnovers, top 50 team with that regard, but Duke is just doing too much well. They're a top 10 team in terms of both points scored and points allowed on a per possession basis. They're able to stand up to Zuby Ejiofor with Cameron Boozer being Mr. Do-It-All, 22 points, 10 rebounds. Duke really does a great job in terms of cutting you out from three-point range as well. And with the St. John's group, if they are in a pressure spot, they do shoot less than 73% at the free throw line as well. I recognize that Rick Pitino is such an amazing coach, but I think that Duke is able to survive and advance here. And then they take on the winner of Michigan State versus UConn. I've got Michigan State. They're number one in the country in terms of defensive rebound percentage away from home. You got Jeremy Fears, who gives you 9+ assists per game. Now, UConn does a great job in terms of guarding the three-point line away from home, top 10 team with that regard. And for Michigan State, they actually shoot above 38% from three-point in a roadside shoot score venue, but they're going to be looking to pound the ball a little bit more down low. Terrace Reed is able to give you some plus rebounds per game. Alex Caravan has been pretty rock solid with that regard as well, but I do think that for UConn, this being a group that they're neither here nor there with regards to their overall shooting percentages. If the game is in a pressure spot, they're a relatively pedestrian team in terms of being able to knock down their free throws. I think that in a battle of great coaches, coaches that have already won a title, Tom Izzo versus Danny Hurley, I give the very slight edge to Tom Izzo. So I do have Michigan State being able to advance here. In the South region, you've got Florida versus Vanderbilt. We just saw Vanderbilt absolutely dump truck Florida a few days ago, and I think the same thing happens here. With Vanderbilt, again, getting back Duke Miles is so incredible for the team, 15+ points. He shoots in the high 30s from three-point range. And Florida, they're just not great with their backcourt play. They're outside the top 170 in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis. Vanderbilt, top 10 team in terms of taking care of the ball. For Florida, they're going to be able to win the battle on the glass. They lead the country in terms of rebound percentage. Ruben Chinyelu, 11.5 points, 11.5 rebounds per game. Thomas Haas able to give you 8+ rebounds per game. Even Micah Handlogden is rock solid. But for Vanderbilt, they are going to be able to find some good looks from three-point range against a Florida team that is legitimately a top 30 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. But that Florida team is much more strong down low. I do think that Devin McLaughlin along Jalen Washington, who combined for about 12 rebounds per game, they hold their own. And for this Vanderbilt team, they seem like currently one of the most complete teams in all of college basketball. So I'm going to be willing to take Vanderbilt in the upset. And then they play the winner of Illinois versus St. Mary's. I do have Illinois. Both of these teams are not allowing a lot lot of second and third chances. Both are in the top 20 with regards to rebound percentage. And for St. Mary's, they lead the country in free throw shooting percentage. Illinois gives up the fewest free throw attempts per possession and per game in the country. And Illinois is also a top 15 team with regards to their own free throw shooting percentage. Keaton Wagler, I think that he's going to be the best guard in this game, 18 plus points. He shoots just below 40% for three. And then Mikey Lewis, Joshua Dent have been very rock solid for the St. Mary's team. But for Illinois, I think that just their depth of bigs, having the Avicic brothers, Davi Mirkovic has been able to do a rock solid job as well. Even though Illinois has a few flaws with not generating turnovers, it's a St. Mary's team that they themselves don't generate a ton. So I do think that Illinois does just enough to be able to advance here. And then in the West region, you've got Arizona versus Wisconsin. It's an Arizona team that I just believe in this defense. They're a top 5 team in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. Not quite that with their 3-point shooting defense, but still, they're a top 50 team with teams shooting about 31.4% from three. And it's a Arizona team that they really don't rely upon the three, but when they need it, they've got it. Montevideo Krivas along Toby Awaka have been absolutely incredible, combining for about 17.5 rebounds per game. Wisconsin does a little things well, top 10 team in terms of not turning the ball over, a top 20 team with regards to their free throw shooting percentage, but Arizona is doing a lot of little things very, very well as well. This is an Arizona team that's in the top 35 in terms of fewest free throw attempts allowed on a per possession basis. Braden Burries, I think, has been one of the most improved players in all of college basketball with over 15 points per game. I think that Arizona is able to do a nice job in terms of guarding the arc against a Wisconsin team that they attempt over 50% of their field goal attempts from three. I like Arizona to advance, and then they face off against, I currently have NC State versus Purdue. Whether it's NC State or Gonzaga, I'm going to advance Purdue. It's a Purdue team that, again, second in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. In either situation, they're going to be able to stand up to the bigs. Might have a little bit of a tough time with Gonzaga down low, but when you've got Oscar Clough, Trey Kaufman-Renn doing all that they're doing, and it's a Purdue team that has legitimately been able to do an okay job in terms of guarding the three-point line, assuming that it is NC State right now for Purdue, and games played away from home, team shoot only about 32.5% from three against them. NC State, they are 287th in opponents' three-point shooting percentage, 40.8% away from home, so regardless, I'm going to be advancing Purdue to the Elite Eight in my bracket. And then you've got Michigan versus Akron. Run ends here for Akron. I mean, it's been a good run, but now you've got a Michigan team that is just so good down low with all three guys giving you 6.5 plus rebounds per game. Other than Armani Lyles, you just don't have a ton for this Akron team. Akron relies upon three-point shooting. Michigan is a top 20 team with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage, and I think that this is a spot where Akron, they do their best. They're just not able to hang in there. And then you got Virginia versus Iowa State, and I've got Virginia advancing. Iowa State, again, they shoot less than 68% at the free throw line. They're going to have a tough time on the glass against a Virginia team that's a top 15 team with regards to their overall rebound percentage. And for Iowa State, where the bread is butter for them on defense is being able to generate turnovers. They're a top 5 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, but this again is a Virginia team that they might not be the best free throw shooting team, but they're doing a lot of little things well in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis. They're doing a pretty rock solid job in terms of taking care of the balls right now. They're a team that is in the top 140 in terms of taking care of the ball. With Iowa State, you've got Milan Memaselevic, who shoots it so well from three-point range, but Virginia, they're not giving you good looks from three-point range either. They're 32nd in the country in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage, having guys like Sam Lewis and company being able to step up from the outside, and it's an Iowa State team that they themselves have been a solid three-point shooting defense, a little bit more fragile on the inside. I think that Virginia wins from within. So, you've got Virginia heading to the Elite Eight. Now you've got Duke versus Michigan State in the Elite Eight. I've got Duke advancing to the Final Four. These two teams match up at the Breslin Center a little bit earlier in the season, albeit that's when Caleb Foster was healthy. If Caleb Foster does return, it should be by this game. Just with Michigan State, I have a little bit of question mark with regards to this offense, even though they do shoot 38+% from three-point away from home. You just have a number one team in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis in Duke. And for Michigan State, they've been giving up a little bit from three-point as well. Teams shoot 35.7% from three-point away from home. I recognize that Duke isn't necessarily like the most amazing dynamo three-point shooting team in the world, but you do have a guy in Cameron Boozer who's able to do a little bit of everything. 22.5 points. He shoots 40% from three-point. Isaiah Evans, 14 points. He's been able to shoot 36.5% from the outside. And with Jeremy Fears, while he does give out 9 assists per game, it is a Michigan State team that's outside the top 150 in terms of ball security. Sneakily, this Duke team has been able to do a pretty solid job in terms of generating turnovers, second in the country in terms of not putting you on the free throw line. I think that Duke advances to the Final Four, even with that Foster injury, and then they face off against the winner of Vanderbilt versus Illinois. I've got Vanderbilt. Again, with Illinois, they are 365th in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis generated on defense. You've got a Vanderbilt team that, with Duke Miles giving you 2.5 steals, about 16 points per contest. They do a great job there. It's an Illinois team that has been taking over 50% of their field goal attempts from three-point range. Vanderbilt well outside the top 100 with regards to opponents' two-point shooting percentage. They're a top 75 team in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage. With Illinois, they're allowing teams to be able to get a few okay looks from three-point range. They allow opponents to shoot about 32.3% from three-point range away from home. They're going to have a nice advantage down low. Tomislav Ivisic and company down low. But for Vanderbilt, I really like what I'm seeing out of Devin McLaughlin right now. He's been able to haul in there about 7 or so rebounds per game. It's a Vanderbilt team that prior to the Miles injury, they were looking like a top 5 team in all of college basketball, in my opinion. I think that they have found it once again, having just the weapons that they do, being a top 15 team in terms of taking care of the ball, and also executing on the inside. This is a Vanderbilt team that as well is a top 40 team with regards to two-point shooting percentage. Both teams are in the top 15 with their free throw shooting percentage, and this Vanderbilt team, they'll put you on the free throw line. Illinois does not, but I do think that for this Vanderbilt team, with the way that they generate turnovers, winning that turnover battle allows them to go to the Final Four. So I've got Vanderbilt going to the Final Four. And then on the other side of the bracket, Arizona versus Purdue is in the Elite Eight. I've got Purdue. Now, I recognize that Purdue is fragile on the inside, outside the top 200 with regards to opponents' two-point shooting percentage. Arizona is a top 40 team with regards to percentage of their field goal attempts that come from the inside. Purdue, though, second in the country with regards to their points scored on a per possession basis. Braden Smith, Fletcher Lawyer. I think that the backcourt is going to be able to win out here. And if you look at the landscape in college basketball, all 4 1 seeds, they're based around their forward play rather than their guard play. I think that the guards just take over this game. It's a Purdue team that is a top 25 team with regards to their three-point shooting percentage. And for Purdue, they actually give up fewer points per possession when they're away from home rather than at home. Arizona, they can have a few issues in terms of taking care of the ball as well. Purdue, one of the most sure-handed teams in all of college basketball. I've got Purdue making the Final Four, and they get a rematch against Michigan. I've got Michigan being able to take down Virginia. Both of these teams are very strong down low. Both of these teams can be a little bit more hit or miss with regards to their guard play. The kryptonite for Michigan has been turnovers outside the top 175 in terms of ball security. That LJ Kaysen injury has been hurting them, but Virginia is a team that really doesn't generate a lot of turnovers. They are well outside the top 225 in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. It's a Michigan team that's so stout on the inside. They're a top 5 team with their own two-point shooting percentage, top 15 team with regards to opponents' two-point shooting percentage, with Michigan just having 3 different guys that give you 6.5+ rebounds per game. I think that wins out here, so I've got Michigan onto the Final Four, and then it's Duke versus Vanderbilt. For Vanderbilt, I do think that this is where the lack of low post play really does hurt them. For Duke, they'll have Patrick Ngangba by this round. You've been able to have Cameron Boozer do such a great job, 22 plus points, 10 boards. He shoots in the 40% range from three-point range. And then for Vanderbilt, even though they do such a great job in terms of taking care of the ball, they're such an efficient offense, they are a team that is going to give up a little bit from the outside. Duke has been a team that's been able to take great care of the ball, even with having out of the fold a few guys like Caleb Foster and company. I do think that they are going to be able to break through this Vanderbilt stable of guards, and I think that they find their way to the title against a winner of Purdue versus Michigan. Keep in mind that the Final Four is being played out there in Indianapolis, Indiana. That's almost a home court environment here for Purdue. We saw Purdue take it to Michigan on Sunday. I think we get a rematch. I think that Purdue does it again. Even though Michigan has been a top 20 team with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage, that defense is starting to leak oil without LJ Kaysen. You've got a Purdue team that does a significantly better job in terms of taking care of the ball. Now for Purdue, they're going to give up some looks on the inside, and Michigan is really good with their two-point shooting percentage. But again, with Purdue, they don't allow second and third chances. Trey Kaufman-Renn, Oscar Clough, I think that they can stand up to Morris Johnson, Ade Mara, and Yaxel Lindeborg. I think Purdue, in what would be a home court environment, gets the job done once again. The preseason number 1 in Purdue goes up against the number 1 in Duke in the title, and I've got Purdue. We're going to go against the 1 seed. I do think that this is where the Caleb Foster injury comes back to hurt Duke. Maybe he's able to go in this game, but if he does, is he going to be anything more than a decoy? We really don't know. It's a pretty serious injury, and for Purdue, you've got the best backcourt, in my opinion, in all of college basketball. A number 2 team in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. Duke does a nice job locking down on the inside. I mean, let's call it what it is. Duke is still doing a nice job in terms of guarding the perimeter, in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage, 21st in the country. That goes into the top 10 when they're away from home, but it's a Purdue team that has been better with their defense when they've been away from home rather than when they have been at home. They're not going to allow a lot of second and third chances. You've got Patrick Ngangba has still been a little bit banged up. Again, he'll be 100% by the time they play this game, but I think that Purdue finds a way with the guards to be able to win. They always say guards win in March. None of the 1 seeds have the same backcourt play that Purdue has. I've got Purdue winning the national title, and that'll wrap things up for the 2026 bracket edition of Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. If you do like sharing from this fine podcast, Coast to Coast Hoops, you're able to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you do have 1 or 2 ways to be able to throw those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at gunit_81. Keep in mind, letters EM, they mean does not matter. So, as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. The other way is via an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it's very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. Coming at you guys every single day with picks and analysis on every single game, every single day. So, I'll be back with you once again tomorrow. Thank you.